Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Chris Beers. More messages from the Signal Group released, including those from Vice President Vance and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. See how the White House responds. A Biden administration gun rule will continue after the Supreme Court today ruled that guns made from kits should be regulated. Our legal correspondent explains the ruling. CEOs of NPR and PBS are on Capitol Hill this afternoon. Republicans accuse the outlets of biased reporting. The question at hand, should tax dollars fund public media? Lawsuits, bomb threats, even death threats. One classical Chinese dance company shares the challenges they face from the Chinese Communist Party. We'll have the latest update from the heart of New York City.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Should taxpayer dollars be used to fund public media? That's the heart of the question of a hearing on Capitol Hill today. The Oversight Committee's DOGE panel is probing the CEOs of NPR and PBS. Republicans accuse the outlets of reporting bias in favor of Democrats, while Democrats say there are bigger issues at hand that should take priority. NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
Amid mounting skepticism about content published on publicly funded NPR and PBS News, the company's CEOs are on Capitol Hill today.
You have 87 registered Democrats, not a single Republican in your editor boards. I mean, how does that work to give us the perception that you're doing your job of actually delivering unbiased information?
Well, I would agree with you that that number is a concern if it is accurate. I do believe that we need to have journalists who represent the full breadth of the American society so that we can report well for all Americans.
Democrats railed against the hearing, saying it lacks focus on what they say are more consequential issues at hand.
And if Republicans were serious about investigating waste, fraud, and abuse, my colleagues would admit that Big Bird is not the problem. Big tech is, big pharma is, big insurance companies are. Elon Musk's companies make billions, $3 billion a year off of government contracts. That's 6 times the money that goes to all of public broadcasting.
There's a lot we should be discussing right now at this hearing. We've, of course, had some pretty shocking security breaches that we're just learning about through a lot of our national security officials. We know that Pete Hegseth should be removed from office or should resign. We have Donald Trump, who, of course, is crashing the stock market.
Several Republicans in Congress are skeptical that tax dollars should go towards any public media at all. Chairwoman Marjorie Taylor Greene says times have changed since Congress first signed off on its funding.
A lot has changed. The invention of the internet, for instance, and social media. It's made news and information widely available to those living in remote areas. In 2015, PBS produced Frontline, put out a documentary, Growing Up Trans, that takes viewers on an intimate and eye-opening journey inside the struggles and choices facing transgender kids and their families. This means that PBS is one of the founders of the trans child abuse industry, all while taking taxpayer money, brainwashing and transing children.
NPR and PBS together collect roughly $260 million in tax revenue per year. And President Trump has said he'd love to see those outlets lose federal funds. As of right now, House Republicans are searching for budget cuts in their budget reconciliation bill. It remains to be seen if public media funding will be on the chopping block. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Next, we have a story from right here in New York City. Shen Yun Performing Arts, a premier classical Chinese dance company, is set to perform at the prestigious Lincoln Center tonight. They're now holding a press conference talking about the international repression and threats they face from the Chinese Communist Party. Let's tune in.
Since we performed here, we've been here every year for a while now, and it's always a great moment in Shen Yun's tour. Lincoln Center, Kennedy Center. We had a bit of a story at Kennedy Center. We can get to that in a little bit. Shen Yun has been in the news quite a bit lately. There's bomb threats, lawsuits, allegations, spies. But largely missing from the media coverage is one thing, and that's our drives them. What is really first of its kind, unprecedented in this type of forum, where we bring out the dancers. We have, to my right, we have Kay Rubicek, who's the mother of Lee Rubicek, who is a college student performing with Shen Yun on practicum. To his right is Allison Chen, a former Shen Yun dancer, and she can tell you more about her career right now. To her right is one of our stars, principal dancer Peter Huang. To his right is musician Rachel Chen, and to her right is Levi Browdy from the Falun Dafa Information Center. And they will speak a little bit about their personal experience and their specific angle. Also available for interview today, we have Jared Manson, who's actually going to be emceeing the performance tonight. You just saw him a moment ago. And we have Nara Us from Japan, who's also a principal dancer. She's the poster girl. That's her right there. And we have Rachel Lee. Where are you, Rachel? There she is. Horn player from Korea. So first, let's start with what is happening. So there's going to be a few points to hear that are going to repeat from the video. So you'll have to follow along with that. And the main thing I want to start with the beginning of Shen Yun, 2006, in New York. Now, I was there when we first started, tried out for the company in the summer of 2006. We didn't even have a theater back then. We had a rehearsal / performance / tryout in the open air with a makeshift curtain that was a clothesline. The orchestra was not in the pit, it was over to the right. And in Dragon Springs, where we're based, a couple hours from here, we have a beautiful Tang Dynamic performance. And that December we started touring. And in the 18 years since then, I've noticed a thing that is following us all along, and that is the Chinese Communist Party's attempts to sabotage us. Now, initially this was mostly in the form of sending performing arts companies to try to compete with us. We would be in one place and they'd perform across the street. We would change our dates and they would change their dates. And then we started getting copies of letters that Chinese embassies and consulates would send to theaters and to local officials in the U.S. and around the world, asking them with thinly veiled threats to cancel the performance in the sake of U.S.-China relations and sister city relations and performing arts companies from China being able to come to that city. When that didn't work to stop us, we saw them try to smear our reputation in the media. Online commentators, the 50-cent army, inserts in the Wall Street Journal and London Guardian and the Australian, multiple other newspapers, the China Watch, if you remember that, with articles attacking Shen Yun. Hacking our ticket site, tire slashing, breaking into a choreographer's house and stealing only his laptop and not the jewelry, and spying. We'll talk about a few of these in a moment. But something has changed the last year or so. An escalation that is very different in nature from what we saw before. In fact, the last few years before the recent development, it seemed like the ambassadors and consul generals just kind of going through the motions. Like they didn't get the memo that they don't need to send these letters anymore. They say, oh, here's our boilerplate about Shen Yun coming to the city. And we'd go to theaters and they say, oh, yeah, we get their letters every year. But the dramatic escalation is a multi-pronged attack. And we first learned about this about a year ago, even longer now, when we got leaked documents from China, from the Ministry of State Security and Ministry of Public Security, and Levi Browdy here can talk about that in a moment. And they spoke of a well-coordinated and extensive effort to completely destroy Shen Yun and the broader Falun Gong community in the United States, a sort of endgame scenario. Specifically, they talked about weaponizing social media and the American press against us, using lawfare and inciting government investigations, and ultimately trying to sow discord between Falun Gong practitioners and the American public, to try to pit this community of Americans and an American company against the U.S. government. And this was before the New York Times, before any of the lawsuits. We already knew about this. And so indeed, over the last year, we've seen CCP-backed Chinese media social influencers exclusively focusing on attacking Shen Yun one episode at a time, hours and hours and hours. We've seen American English-speaking Caucasian YouTubers being offered money to do videos attacking Shen Yun. One of them came on the record lately, and we heard about this before as well. We've seen frivolous lawsuits against Shen Yun, against our headquarters. We've seen large-scale attacks in a campaign by the New York Times with no less than 10 articles attacking Shen Yun. And we've seen horrifying bomb threats, death threats, rape threats, 36 of them. I just got one more this morning from Cheyenne, Wyoming. A total of 41 if you include the end of last tour. So of course the question is, why? Why is the CCP so afraid of Shen Yun? Why is the CCP targeting us, a performing arts company that does classical Chinese dance and music and tells stories? Clearly the CCP is afraid. But to understand why it's happening and what they're afraid of, I need to go back a little bit to some of the things Jared was talking about here with the origin story of Falun Gong and Shen Yun. So let's not go back 5,000 years right now. You can watch the show tonight if you want to do that. Let's just go back to 1992. This is the end of the Qigong boom, a period of the 70s and 80s in particular in China where you had millions of people across China, over 100 million were estimated, at dawn doing Tai Chi or Qigong exercises. And there's a lot of money, a lot of fraud involved, a lot of issues were coming up socially. And in 1992, Falun Gong is introduced to the public by Mr. Li Hongzhi. And he says, this is actually what Qigong is for. It's for elevating yourself spiritually and morally. And I'm going to teach this practice, and it's going to be free. And it's always going to be free. It's got 5 exercises. The principles are truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. And after a couple of years of giving lectures across the country, the popular practice reached maybe 70 to 100 million people, according to Chinese government estimates from late 90s. So in 1999, Jiang Zemin, chairman of the Communist Party at the time, says this is too many people, more people than we have members of the Communist Party, and bans Falun Gong. This is a story I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, so we won't get into the details, but basically overnight you have a massive propaganda blitz. Up to 100 million people are turned into enemies of the state. Some of them are party members. Some of them are high-ranking officials. Some of them are artists. And they are arrested. They're sent to labor camps. Their family members then go to petition for the release of their parents or their siblings or their children. And they're rounded up and sent to labor camps too. They're tortured. They're killed. And later on we find out that they're being killed for their organs in a massive atrocity that some people are calling the crime of the century, that is still little known publicly, but is very well documented at this point. So outside of China, what do Falun Gong practitioners do? Well, these are people who were interested in the practice because they wanted something spiritual, a yoga plus, a Tai Chi plus. They wanted something more. They weren't looking for political campaigning. They weren't activists, right? That's not where we were. But now people like them in China, a lot of them here are in the diaspora, are ethnic Chinese who came here to study, people with high education, advanced degrees, successful people. They say, well, what can we do to stop the persecution in China? And so that's when you see the parades and the torture exhibits and the flyers and people pounding the pavement in Washington and trying to get the media interested, because the Western media didn't know what to do with this. In fact, if you look at the coverage of the persecution from the early period 25 years ago, all the way to 2001, 2002, you see a lot of parroting of Chinese Communist Party propaganda. And then the media just went silent around 2002, 2003. And it's around that time that some of the Falun Gong practitioners in the US and Canada and Australia who were artists, some of them top artists from China, choreographers, composers, musicians, and dancers, they said, what can we do with our skills to talk about what's happening in China? Let's do a little performance. And they started with a Chinese New Year performance. And part of that was because the Chinese embassy would put on a production every year, and they said, well, this doesn't represent us. This is red from top to bottom. It's all about how great things are in China and the CCP and how grateful they are to Mao and everybody else. Let's put on something that actually represents traditional Chinese culture, and at the same time, let's talk about what is happening to Falun Gong practitioners there. And that was part of one of those productions back in 2004 and 2005, and then finally they said, let's do this for real. Let's form a company, and let's start Shen Yun Performing Arts. And that was in 2006. So why is the CCP so afraid? Getting back to that question. So I would break it down into two main reasons, though you could write a whole book about this. The first one would be the Falun Gong connection. The CCP has tried to stop anything Falun Gong related outside of China. It could be an art exhibit, it could be a concert, it could be an event at a school. We experienced cancel culture 20-something years before everybody else. And not only that, in the performance here at Lincoln Center, where tonight there will be VIPs from all walks of life, we show what is happening in China on stage in a moving and memorable way. Peter plays one of those roles. There's something about art that is very, very powerful, that it's storytelling in a very direct form. And this is a persecution the CCP has spent all these resources for a quarter of a century saying it does not exist. And here we are performing it at the Kennedy Center, at the Lincoln Center, and everywhere else. Not only that, the performers are Falun Gong practitioners, which the CCP has wanted to brand in all its negative light. And here you see them happy and joyful and talented. And that really dismantles their narrative. So that's the first reason. Second reason, if you see our billboards, it says right there, China before communism. That is what Shen Yun shows on stage. 5,000 years of civilization, what it was like before Mao, before the Cultural Revolution, before it was almost entirely wiped out. And Shen Yun is reviving that. And when you revive it and you have people in the West saying, oh, I found the real China here. This is the China that I grew up admiring. And when Chinese people say, this reminds me of the stories my grandmother used to tell me when I was a kid, they start to question, perhaps, why they have this Soviet import running the country that has killed 60 to 80 million people. By seeing China before communism, and I don't know that this is necessarily what the choreographers and composers and all of us set out to do when we first started, but by showing China before communism, you can imagine a China without communism. The CCP is terrified of that. So what if we evacuated in the middle of setup, 3 hours outside in freezing temperature. Last year, let's start with this one. There are two PRC nationals by the name of John Chen and Lin Feng living in the U.S. who were arrested in a sting operation by the FBI, pleaded guilty and sentenced for acting as agents of the CCP. They had tried to bribe an undercover FBI agent who was posing as an IRS official in an attempt to revoke Shen Yun's nonprofit status and tax exemption. They admitted to working directly under a PRC official. And they were also connected to lawsuits targeting our headquarters that have since been dismissed as frivolous, dismissed with prejudice, it's called, which means you can't file them again, can't keep filing them over and over again, for environmental issues. And the bomb threats, that's perhaps the most shocking, that a performing arts company in America would face bomb threats. Our audience members would face bomb threats, the staff. Just the last 2 weeks, we've gotten them in Birmingham, Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama, St. Louis, Des Moines, Syracuse, Cheyenne, San Lorenzo, Spain, Geelong and Taichung in Taiwan. 32 of them this tour alone, just under 3 months, 5 more at the end of last tour. I'll give you a couple of examples. This is from St. Louis, March 13th, Stifel Theater. And it reads, this is an email that was sent to the theater. Actually, this one was posted on their ticketing site. Multiple plastic bombs have been placed everywhere. All future performances of Shen Yun will be canceled immediately. All cooperation with Shen Yun must be stopped. A statement must be issued. If we do not see the statement within 12 hours, we will detonate the bomb. One that we received February 7th on our website, the Shen website. I swear to God, we will kidnap and kill Falun Gong supporters in the U.S. Congress in the near future, and then dump their bodies on the streets of Washington, D.C., the Statue of Liberty, or around the White House. We've also had bomb threats targeting President Trump for supporting State Department, Congress, and multiple entities in Taiwan. Also, not just Shen Yun, but the Falun Dafa Information Center has received sometimes daily threats. Dragon Springs as well. Chinese New Year, we're going to kill the guards, we're going to rape the women, on and on and on and on. I won't dignify by reading more. I read one of these in D.C. and then I kind of broke down, so I'll stop reading that. Interestingly, we can't say that the CCP is the one that sent them. It just falls in line with everything else that they've been doing and the escalation of the campaign. But what's interesting is they've never denied it. It's all over the media that the CCP is related to this. They've never denied it. They never condemned it. They don't dare to even condemn terrorism. Now, as you know, as professionals better than I do in this field, journalism doesn't operate in a vacuum. What the journalists do has real consequences. Let me show a graph here. This is a graph of the death threats targeting Shen Yun, Falun Gong, and supporters by month. It starts from March of last year to March of this year. Did not exist before March of last year. It started in March after we knew about the new CCP campaign. You have a few, some zeros, 2, 3, 3, 1, 0. Then beginning of this tour, 9. January, 17. February, 34. March, 22. It's not even updated. It's at least 25. What changed during that time? Other than the campaign, the only other thing that changed is the New York Times. The New York Times articles attacking Shen Yun started in August. We have at least correlation here. In fact, we have more than correlation in some cases. Let me read you a bomb threat that we received on our website, Shen Yun website, 2 days after the New York Times mega hit piece against Shen Yun. And I call it a hit piece because they did not include our voices. They included claims that we already told them were false, and they had a specific narrative that they went for. Okay, here's the bomb threat we received. Immediately stop slandering, spreading rumors, and groundless accusation against the New York Times. Delete all negative articles. We had press statements at the time about the New York Times, and publicly apologize to the New York Times. If these articles are not deleted within a month, the slanderous attacks are stopped, and publicly apologize to the New York Times, then inexplicable accidents are likely to happen to Shen Yun members, to Faith Yun Academy staff and students' families. Their residences may catch fire for no apparent reason, or they may be attacked by New York gang members. We hope you will take responsibility for them and their families too. I put up a security camera. The New York Times has spent more time and ink investigating Shen Yun's backstage and behind-the-scenes stories than it ever did into a quarter century of torture and murder and organ harvesting in China. While the Wall Street Journal got a Pulitzer Prize for its reporting in the beginning of the persecution, the New York Times completely disappeared. Imagine if they used these resources to cover the human toll on millions of people in China. With a few exceptions, hopefully less in the future, or less exceptions, that's more, however you want to put that. With a few exceptions and hopefully less exceptions, the media seems to be missing the story. Now, I'm going to point out three things, but there are many, many more if you wanted to analyze this. The first is the context and the urgency of why these performers, the dancers, the musicians, the MCs, all of us, why we do what we do. That's the part of the story that's being missed. We have performers who have family being persecuted in China. We have performers who have lost parents to persecution in China. All our performers are blacklisted. We have performers who could not go see their parent for a last time, missed their kids' weddings. And the reality of what's happening in China today is something that, as Falun Gong practitioners, we are very much up to speed on. We read the daily reports coming out of China. And it's very much in our minds what is happening to people just like us from meditating on a daily basis. And we're hoping that by displaying that on stage as part of our performance, and it's not the major part, we have about 20 pieces, you have probably a couple that talk about this, that can help give voice to the people in China who have no voice. More than that, the performance also, if you hear the dancers talk about it, and if you see the audience reviews that we had playing before, they're uplifting, in spite of all this, right? They're full of hope. They're inspiring. These are the words that people use when they talk about their experience seeing Shen Yun. They talk about finding an idea for a movie they're going to make in Hollywood, or a new design, or even some people say a purpose in life, just from seeing the show. Shen Yun is a very positive performance. We do talk about persecution, but it ends with a spirit of hope, of redemption, of faith. And that's an important message in our world today, we believe. We firmly believe. And it's important outside of China, it's important in China. Of course, we can't perform in China. That's the one place we officially cannot perform. But for the people in China, Shen Yun is a beacon of hope. We actually get regular emails on our website, when are you coming to China? We're in China, we're waiting for you. We had a guy in Vancouver who was sent to spy on us. And after the show, he found a security guard and said, you guys are doing a great job. I was sent here to spy on you by the PSB, but I'm on your side. We have people from China who will fly out regularly to Taiwan, to LA, to Vancouver to see our show, just to see our show. And finally, Shen Yun is really a huge American success story. Where is that in the media? Here you have a company of first-generation immigrants, came here legally, with talent, with a dream, with a lot of hard work, and built this company from nothing, without government funding, without corporate support, at a time when companies were going bankrupt. And in spite of the pandemic, in spite of financial recession, built it to the fastest growing American performing arts company in history. So that's also being missed. There's a lot more to this story, and I hope you can hear a lot of it from our panel here. I'm going to introduce the first speakers. Let me first introduce a concept of what is a practicum. So Lee Rubicek and his mom, Kay, is performing as what's called a student practicum. As part of his education with the Feitian College. This is a program that's approved by New York State Board of Education, where they can perform with Shen Yun as part of their studies. They're not paid. All their expenses are paid. They're on full scholarship, as are all the students at Feitian. And they have a reverse academic semester. So they're touring. They have some academic work they do on tour. Most of their academic work is done during the summer. So that's why he's a student performing tonight with Shen Yun. So without further ado, Kay and Lee, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Kay Rubicek. This is my son, Lee Rubicek. I'm a parent of 2 adult dance students who have toured with Shen Yun as part of their practicum study since 2019. In 2016, my son Lee began training in classical Chinese dance at his middle school in Orange County, New York. This training inspired him to audition for a scholarship at Feitian Academy of the Arts with the hope of one day touring with Shen Yun, and he was able to achieve that in a few years. He's now a junior in Feitan College and enrolled in the practicum program with Shen Yun. So studying classical Chinese dance, culture and language is a challenge, but it was a great challenge. Physically, creatively, mentally, it has given him new ways to express himself, to tell stories, to communicate. It has gotten him off the computer that he had been hunched over before, like many teenage boys these days. And it not only gave him an amazing posture and physical self-awareness, but also newfound confidence, grit, self-discipline, and a healthy attitude toward life that will benefit him forever. What more could any parent hope for? Then, after having the chance to tour with Shen Yun and be mentored by some of the world's leading figures in this field, he's had an opportunity that most performing artists of any age can only dream of, and that is to take their art and to present it to willing audiences on the best stages of the world, like here tonight, Lincoln Center. My husband and I are often in amazement at the experience he has gained with Shen Yun and what he and his fellow artists have been able to achieve. I know from my own experience and from watching audience reviews that the impact Shen Yun has does not last just one night in the theatre. Shen Yun's message of hope touches people's hearts and souls. It inspires kindness and humanity, goodness and beauty. I regularly see people, audience members, with tears of joy or smiles of awe. And so many say that it has changed their lives for the better. And I read last year, Shen Yun had more than 1 million audience members. That's 1 million people who took home Shen Yun's positive message and put a touch of that positivity into their lives, their families, their relationships, their communities. So many people say they want to change the world and make the world a better place. But how many actually do it? How many have such a tangible, meaningful impact as Shen Yun does? I know I speak for many parents when I say that we are so proud that our kids not only want to make the world a better place, but they're actually willing to do it. They're willing to put in the effort and choose to work with such an outstanding organisation that actually makes it happen. But it's not easy for anyone to change the world, is it? Now, I want to speak on behalf of other parents and concerned community members. We have been horrified, truly, to see the gross distortions and false narratives about Shen Yun in mainstream media over the past year. It's really scary. As much as we know the serious safety concerns that Shen Yun takes with every tour, we cannot help but be concerned about their safety when we see Beijing's ability to manipulate and control our society like this. So in the wake of these public attacks against Shen Yun, the Shen Yun community of parents, students and staff created a petition in which we call upon relevant departments in the US government to protect American interests, companies and people from Beijing's control. We know that this is a case of attacking Shen Yun now, and if we don't address the problem now, other groups will be the next target. So today, this is the first time we are actually unveiling the results of this petition to the public. In this petition, we call for, 1, the Department of Justice to investigate sources of this foreign malign influence campaign and bring to justice those behind these attacks. 2, we call for Congress and the President to take action to protect American interests, companies and people from CCP malign influence operations. These actions need to be robust and savvy enough to effectively protect Americans while preserving our freedoms and liberty. And 3, we call upon the American media to act responsively, prioritizing transparency of sources with Beijing ties and true objectivity over the allure of attention-grabbing stories and the furthering of any ideological agenda. So with this petition, over 1,550 people signed this. 634 are current dancers, musicians and production staff. 142 former dancers and musicians. 791 family members, mostly parents just like me. Some of them added comments to the petition when they signed, which was optional, not required. And Lee will share some of those comments with you now and some of his experience in relation to them.
This is an excerpt from one of the comments written by a person who signed the petition. The revival of my heritage, the stability of my livelihood, and the freedom to believe in my spiritual faith. In America, these are the things that I've always counted on the United States Constitution to protect. And yet, today, these are precisely the things that are at stake. Beginning with the CCP's attempts to sabotage the company that I am with, it is terrible to think that something like this could even take place on American soil. Before I joined Feitian College, I thought it was impossible for the CCP to infiltrate the United States, and that all of us were under the protection of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. However, this all changed when I met a professor from Feitian College who was beaten unconscious and had his house ransacked by CCP-hired thugs. The most shocking thing was that this happened on American soil. This is Dr. Peter Lee, after being brutally beaten by 3 thugs in his own home in Atlanta, Georgia. This showed me that even in the US, wherever you may be, even in the privacy and comfort of your own home, the CCP can attack you. And since these attacks have happened before, we know that the threats that we face today are very much real. This is another quote from a person that signed the petition. I was lucky to have escaped communist China, but now the same government is trying to exert control into America. Growing up in the West, I've been fortunate to be raised by 2 loving parents, something that I would have taken for granted. But after joining Feitian College and joining the practicum program, I've come to know many fellow dancers and artists who have not been half as fortunate as me. One of my fellow dancers, Stephen Wang, was just a young boy when both of his parents were arrested and detained for practicing the Falun Dafa meditation in China. For years, Stephen and his sisters could never see both their parents together, because as soon as one of them was released, the other would be detained again. Later, Stephen finally got the opportunity to flee China and join Shen Yun, where he could use his talent in dance to tell his story and show the world the atrocities of the CCP, all in hope that one day his family would be freed. Soon after arriving in America, Stephen's dad did get fully released, but before Stephen could find out, his father passed away from the damage done to his body from a decade of maltreatment and torture by the authorities. Stephen never got the chance to see his dad before he died, and his mom is still suffering persecution there today. If Stephen tried to visit her in China, he would no doubt be immediately arrested, just like any of us would be. How crazy is it that we still can't perform classical Chinese dance and tell these true stories in China today? Stephen Wang is only one of many Shen Yun artists and staff members who have personally experienced the brutality of the CCP. Every day I'm honored to be surrounded by fellow artists who are using their artistic excellence to stand up to the CCP's malicious acts to save their friends and family. It takes a lot of courage for them to do that, knowing that they have family in China. I'm inspired by the courage I see in my fellow dancers and teachers who are able to push forward through any difficulty and dedicate themselves to Shen Yun's mission to revive traditional Chinese culture. This is the Shen Yun I have come to know and am proud to be a part of. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Allison Chen, and I'm a former dancer with Shen Yun Performing Arts. I performed with the company from 2007 to 2015 as a student performer on practicum. So I was a student at Feitian Academy of the Arts as well as Feitian College. And after I stopped performing with Shen Yun, I transitioned to a teaching position, and I've been teaching dance in upstate New York since 2016. My newest job is actually a mother to a newborn baby. So that's the hardest challenge I've been facing currently. As we've been listening to Kay and Lee share about the petition, this was something that I also signed as well back in August. I felt that a lot of the negative media attacks were pretty outrageous, and I mostly signed because my husband and my sister, they're also currently still touring with Shen Yun, so I'm also concerned for their safety as well. So every few days I do check up on their safety. My husband's currently performing in France, my sister's in Canada, and it really hits home when you think that potentially some danger could happen to them. And also we mostly, my family does agree that this is not the Shen Yun that we know. So I think a lot of people don't realize that Shen Yun actually gives so many great opportunities to talented young people. And because I was given this opportunity to tour with the company from a young age, I built up a very, very strong work ethic. And I really learned that dedication pays off. I think a lot of people overlook that nowadays. And they only try to highlight and distort people's experiences at Shen Yun to pull it off as something negative. But we actually experienced way more positive things while performing with the company. So I came to Shen Yun back in the early days when the company just formed, back in 2007. So I came in 2007 when I was just a teenager. And this was something that I really wanted to do. My parents, they weren't sure if I could actually go dance professionally. They had their doubts, but I actually really, really wanted to come. So I convinced them to give me a chance to audition, and to their surprise, I made it. And that's when I joined Feitian Academy of the Arts as a dance student. And subsequently, because I was able to work on my skills, that I was given the opportunity to tour with the company. But I had to consistently keep that up, because if I wasn't good enough, I wouldn't be able to continue touring with the company on practicum. And also because of my doubtful parents, I was a bit of a rebel. I tried to prove them wrong, because they would actually call me every few months or so, and they would ask me, do you want to come home? How about you come home to California? You can go study hard and go apply for Stanford, apply for one of the UCs. But that really wasn't my calling. I didn't want to do that. I really wanted to live the life and experience the life of a professional dancer, if I could. So I kept pushing through. That's why I worked really, really hard on my dancing skills. And they were very surprised that I actually continued to study in Feitian College as a dancer. And eventually I even got my master's degree in dance. So all of that was because I saw how my classmates were all working really hard. I saw the professional dancers and their dedication to the craft. And that's really what pushed me forward. And I wanted to be a part of that as well. So needless to say, I think the company culture of Shen Yun has really influenced my work ethic and my personality today. So even starting from a young age, we started to build a very strong sense of responsibility. When we were touring with the company, we always were taught to be on time. We were always told to do our best if we could. And after every show, we would actually summarize how every performance went so that we could be accountable for our mistakes, not to belittle us, but actually so that we could do better for the next performance. And because we were in this group environment, we worked as a team. So we were always practicing how to communicate with each other and how to solve problems. And I think for a teenager, back when I was a teenager, I was able to put that into practice versus just hearing the theory behind this. So we got to do this on a daily basis. And above all, I think being a part of the company, we really learned not to back down when faced with challenges. So after being with Shen Yun for 8 years, I think that's something that mentality and that work ethic has really stuck with me. After I transitioned to become a teacher in 2016, I think that's something that I've really kept with me. So I transitioned from being a dance teacher to a professor, and now I'm currently the chair of the dance department at Fei Tian College at Middletown, a branch campus of Fei Tian College. So even though the environment has changed for me, I've kept that mentality this whole time. And because that's how I was brought up. So it's very natural for me to, keep that. And now, even now, with my new role as a mother, there are actually a lot of challenges that I face every single day. I would argue this is probably the hardest job that I've ever done. But I learned actually from Shen Yun that if you persevere, good things will come as long as you keep going. So I'm sure many of my fellow artists, fellow dancers and musicians, they also feel the same way. A lot of them, when I see them on stage now, I'm pretty sure a lot of them work harder than I did back when I was young. So we do what we do because we really love our craft. We love our work. We love what we do. And I think that's the real spirit behind all the Shen Yun dancers and musicians. That's what drives us. And that's why we're willing to push ourselves through all these different challenges. So that's just a little bit of my experience. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Peter Huang, and I'm currently a principal dancer with Shen Performing Arts. I'm not a greatest speaker, so please bear with me. So for me as an artist, to see the picture that some of the media has painted us, painted Shen Yun, the accusations that we have a toxic work environment or that our training is abusive, to me personally, that's straight, that's just insulting, One of the things that I've learned from Shen Yun is the pursuit of excellence. I believe that in order to achieve excellence, no matter what field, sacrifices need to be made. And in the end, if you want to choose to go through with it, that's completely up to you. And in Shen Yun, that's exactly the same. Many people talk about the work ethic of the Navy SEALs or the Olympic athletes, and nobody says that their training is abusive. Actually 2 months ago, we were performing in Rome, and we had a chance to visit the Sistine Chapel. And I learned then that Michelangelo, he spent years, often in the dark, painting that ceiling. And after he was done, he developed problems to his eyes, his neck, and his back. And that truly inspired me because I think he was willing to sacrifice all that. He chose that path. And even to this day, his works of art inspire and uplift millions of people around the world. And that to me is an inspiration. Our training, the training in Shen Yun, is not comparable to, I just said, like the Navy SEALs or the Olympic athletes. But it is tough. It is both demanding physically and mentally, and I understand that it is not for everyone. And but this is the path that we chose, and we're okay with it. And granted, along the way there will be some injuries, like Lee has gone through. And actually, last year I started feeling pain in my Achilles, and I grew up a Kobe Bryant fan, so I really wanted to tough it out, But in the end, when my company manager found out, she said that I should rest, that to view my career as a marathon and not a sprint. And I really appreciate that. And I still think back to when Kobe Bryant tore his Achilles. He walked off the court by himself, walked back on, made 2 free throws, and then walked off again. And then that mentality, that dedication, it still inspires me to this day. But I also understand that as a performer, we all have a responsibility to our audience. For me to perform while injured, that would be very irresponsible, because we want to bring what's, our best to the audience. And the accusations that Shen Yun is forcing its performers to perform while injured, I think that's just not true. Because if you think logically, which performing arts company could thrive if it was forcing its performers to perform while injured. That just doesn't make sense. And then, the success that Shen has had over the years, we've grown from 1 company to 8 companies, and the positive reviews that we've received all over the world is a testament to what Shen is doing, that Shen is on the right path. Actually, one of the most important lessons that I've learned was from my academic teacher, who's actually sitting right there. I remember he taught us that the purpose of art throughout the ages is not to entertain, it's more to educate, uplift, and to glorify the divine. And I truly believe that what Shen is doing today is just that, to uplift people and bring them closer to the gods. And today when I see Shen being attacked from all directions, from the Western media, it really saddens me, and I hope that we can all change that narrative. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Chen, and I'm a principal violist with Shen Yun Performing Arts. After being with Shen Yun for almost 14 years, I often get asked why I wanted to join Shen Yun and why I stayed with the company for so many years. Of course, there was the allure of traveling the world on practicum, performing in top venues, and achieving what many professional musicians would call the pinnacle of their career before I even graduated from college. But today, I want to share how much I've grown personally and spiritually from my experience at Shen Yun. I grew up in a mostly Caucasian city in the suburbs of Chicago as a second-generation Chinese American, so I rarely came in contact with my heritage. I remember I was actually quite embarrassed to be Chinese when I was younger, and I told my grandparents every time my friends would come over, don't cook Chinese food, don't speak Chinese, they're gonna think I'm weird or strange. I just really wanted to be American. And then I watched Shen Yun. And to see my culture so beautifully expressed on stage, from the music to the stories, it gave me a sense of pride. It made me feel like Chinese culture wasn't just about eating dumplings on Chinese New Year. It depicted China as a place with 5,000 years of glorious history. When I heard that Shen Yun was filled with the people just like me who shared the same faith, joining Shen Yun became my new dream. After coming to Feitian and Shen Yun, I found myself surrounded by traditional culture. The tales from ancient China that we learned in class always had an important moral lesson, and these stories of courage and loyalty helped shape my character and dispelled my previous rejection of my heritage, replacing it with deep appreciation. But the most important reason why joining Shen Yun has changed me for the better is because of my spiritual practice, Falun Dafa. The community at Shen Yun is built on the basis of faith. Everyone is not only striving for excellence, but also leading their lives by the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. In this environment, I feel encouraged to become a better person. But as I am perfecting my craft and working on my character, sometimes it's easy to overlook the fact that people in China who share the same faith as me are being persecuted. Growing up in the West, the persecution always felt a bit distant because nothing actually happened to me personally. But a few years back, during a show in Holland, it was intermission, and a Chinese lady came up to the pit. And I don't remember exactly what the acknowledgement was, but she acknowledged our erhu player at the time. And in that look, there was a lot of understanding, and there was a lot of meaning in that, in the acknowledgement they shared. So out of curiosity, I asked her who the lady was. And she responded, "We were in the same labor camp together." In that moment, the weight of our mission felt very real. We weren't just here to entertain. We have a mission of reviving Chinese culture and sharing the stories of practitioners in China whose voices cannot be heard. For someone who feels strongly about this mission, I was deeply hurt when I heard about the bomb threats towards our company. As a performing arts group, our mission to revive traditional Chinese culture and raise awareness about the persecution of Falun Dafa came from a place of faith and compassion. To see people go as far as endangering the well-being of our community, our families, and even our audience members is egregious. It gives me more motivation to give the best to our audience members, even when we're being attacked in the most hurtful way. I joined Shen Yun to connect with my roots, but I stayed because Shen Yun changed me for the better and has given my life purpose. For me, Shen Yun is not just a show or a workplace. Shen Yun is my home. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Levi Browdy. I'm the Executive Director of the Falun Dafa Information Center. We're a human rights organization, all-volunteer organization, dedicated to the human rights of Falun Gong practitioners in China, and we're reporting on that for 25 years. And more recently, really being focused on transnational repression. And as you heard today from what these people were talking about, a core component of the transnational repression of the Chinese regime against Falun Gong increasingly has become to sabotage, to cancel, to destroy Shen Yun, the company. I'd like to underscore a couple things on the broader issue here, because what's really at play goes way beyond the Falun Gong diaspora, the community. It goes way beyond this one company, Shen Yun. This is a national security issue of, I would say, the gravest kind. I want to share a couple quotes from you. For you here. One is from U.S. Attorney Damian Williams, and this is, he said this from the Southern District of New York. He said this shortly after arresting the two gentlemen that Lisha had referenced that had tried to bribe their IRS to go after Shen Yun. And he said, efforts to manipulate and use the arms of the U.S. government to carry out the PRC government's autocratic aims are as shocking as they are insidious. Another quote. This is from U.S. Brigadier General Robert Spalding, testifying before our Congress last year, where he said the CCP uses our own media against us. And one good example of this is the attack on Falun Gong. And he goes on to talk about how they've basically convinced our media, our university institutions, that Falun Gong is weird or strange or somehow strange group. And they're controlling the narratives here in the United States. Lisha talked about the campaign the CCP has engaged against Shen Yun has been going on for 18 years. We did a report on this and documented at that time 130 incidents across 38 countries where primarily Chinese diplomats, sometimes the ambassador, him or herself, in the country, going to threaten the theater, threaten the local government. In the Dominican Republic, they even chased down the president of the country, trying to put pressure on these countries to not have Shen Yun perform. And the range of tactics has gone from threatening theaters and government officials to disinformation, sabotaging vehicles, imprisoning family members and threatening family members that are inside China. So this has been going on for 18 years. And as Lisha mentioned, over the last year, there's been a tremendous escalation. Where has that come from? The very highest levels of the Chinese regime. We have multiple sources, including a well-known professor in Australia, several other sources within the Ministry of Public Security that say this came from Xi Jinping himself, who acknowledged that all the efforts they've been undertaking over the last 25 years to silence Falun Gong and Shen Yun have failed. And they needed to get very serious about eliminating Falun Gong globally. Their words, not mine. And so that's what we've been seeing. And they laid out a strategy. They said, we're going to establish a beachhead in social media, YouTube influencers, things of that nature, with narratives that will work in the United States, with things that make people angry, such as abuse of young people. This is not something they ever talk about with Falun Gong or Shen Yun inside China, but they find the narratives in this country, seed that information in influencers, and then try and bait the mainstream media, and in so doing, drive a wedge between Shen Yun and Falun Gong and the U.S. government and American people. And so this is what they've been saying in these meetings with the Ministry of Public Security. Lo and behold, over the last year and a half, that's exactly what we've seen. And that's what's behind everything that they've been talking about today in this campaign to go after Shen Yun. So, as I mentioned, this is really not just about the Falun Gong community or Shen Yun. This is a playbook. This is the ability for the Chinese regime to weaponize American institutions against America. And if they succeed at doing this against Shen Yun, against the Falun Gong community, it will not stop there. The persecution of Falun Gong never stops at Falun Gong. They were doing forced organ harvesting on Falun Gong for many years, and suddenly they start doing it on Uyghurs and other groups. John Chen, the man that was arrested for bribing the IRS, guess what else he was doing? He was coordinating other spies in California to interfere with our elections. If they succeed in implementing this playbook to try and sabotage or cancel Shen Yun, this is a playbook they can repeat against any person or organization in America or around the world. And so, while these stories are very close to us inside this Falun Gong community and the Shen Yun community, they are a national security issue. And this is what we need to start talking about, is this not just a victimization of a group of people. This is a weaponization of our institutions against ourselves. And that's what we need Congress to step up with, our government agencies to step up with. And as Kay had mentioned, while protecting the civil liberties, while protecting our freedoms in this country, find a way to protect Americans and American companies from Beijing. That's really what this story is about. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Before we open up the questions, I want to thank especially the performers who have a show tonight. Setup days, for those in the performing arts world, know is very stressful. There's a lot going on. It's a very hectic schedule. But we appreciate your time. You know, it's a very important conversation. The artists that are here today, the ones that you'll see performing with such joy, they're among the best in the world at what they do. And their dedication, as you heard, comes from a sense of purpose. Performing to save a lost culture, a world treasure from the brink of extinction, performing to speak up for those who have no voice in China, and performing to bring a message of hope and courage and faith. Our calls to action from the petition. To reiterate, we are asking for the Department of Justice to investigate the sources of the foreign malign influence, the transnational repression, including the bomb threats, including the weaponization of social media and trying to influence mainstream media and the government with lawfare. Second, asking Congress and the President to take action to protect the American people, interests, and companies and freedoms from the CCP's influence here in America, and for the American media to act responsibly with transparency and integrity when covering these issues and other issues in China. So thank you again for being here. We'll now open for questions for me or for the panel. You guys have a microphone? Do you have a microphone? Perhaps we can, yep. Oh, okay, perfect. We have a microphone up here. Town hall style. We can take it off. Yeah, we can just give it to them. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And just, if you're addressing it to somebody in particular, please mention who that is.
I'm Peter Schwab with the Epoch Times. I was just wondering, I've noticed recently, and some Shen Yun people have mentioned Shen Yun go into China, or even like, you know, that's a plan. So what gives you the confidence that Shen Yun would ever be allowed to perform in China, or not to mention it like...
Who's on the record saying that?
All of us.
It's a dream. It's been a dream since day one for all of us. I'll just answer that real quick, but then I actually want to hear what the Chinese people have to say. It's part of what keeps me going. Sometimes when, you know, it's a long tour. The thought of going and performing and bringing this culture, witnessing that historic moment. We did almost perform in Hong Kong. We had 7 sold-out shows in Hong Kong. I was in a company. I was going to go there. We had a rehearsal, and it was an amalgamation of previous years, like the best of, because we have a new show every year, was the best of all the former performances up to that point. And we had a dress rehearsal, and some of the dancers had their bags packed. But right on stage during a debrief, still in costume and sweating, we were told that the shows were canceled because we didn't get visas. So that's as close as we got. That was a good 15 years ago now. What do you guys think about performing in China?
I'm not Chinese, but can I say something?
Just this once.
One thing that many people don't know about Falun Gong is that over the last 20 years, they and supporters inside China have constituted the largest civil disobedience movement in world history as far as I know. Tens of millions in China, again, this is at least going on for 20 years, engage in activities predominantly like running an underground print shop. They make leaflets and pamphlets like they used to do in the 18th century here, and in the back rooms of their apartments or in the basement, and under cover of night, sending those out, distributing those in their local village, their town, their high-rise building. This is going on for years, and that's had a tremendous effect on the understanding of the Chinese people, because, you know, again, they're growing up under state-run media. They're not necessarily getting any of this stuff, not just stuff inside China, but also outside China. And there's been a tremendous awakening. We've heard anecdote after anecdote after anecdote of local areas, local policemen who've received these kind of pamphlets and said, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to persecute Falun Gong anymore. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. The persecution remains very severe overall, but there's so many of these pockets and so many of these stories. This persecution can't stand forever when that amount of people are starting to understand what's really going on to Falun Gong and also the true history of the CCP. And so I think it's only a matter of time till that hits a certain threshold where enough is enough. This persecution can't go on for much longer. And I think once the persecution ends, not only could Shen Yun go into China, but it will be celebrated immensely as something of tremendous pride. You know, I think as Li Shai or someone was talking about, you know, even today people come out of China when they can and go see Shen Yun in Taiwan or local areas near China because they see this is the real China. This is real Chinese culture. And I think it will be a very proud and happy day, and it's not too far off before Shen Yun will be embraced and welcomed into China.
Thanks.
Peter, Rachel, Allison? Anything to add? All right, maybe later. Next question, please.
Hi, I'm Lisa Zarelli with the America First podcast, and I congratulate you all on your perseverance. And I wish to say that I've been in education for 30 years, and we have seen in the past 5 years predominantly, especially in New York, an infiltration of the very things you speak of. There is a Chinese association affiliated with Brooklyn College who funded a large majority of the 2021 New York State guidance, in which the children are taught on page 7 to be activists, social activists. And the majority of the guidance details how horrible America is. So in relation to that, and the examples that you have provided, we know as well that there was a police-like organization right in Manhattan with the Chinese Communist Party. They are situated there to seek out Chinese Americans and harass them. What can we do with your petition through the school systems, if we may, to promote Shen Yun and to further educate on what the Communist Party is doing here in New York alone?
That's a great question. Yeah, the police stations, I think there was over 100 of them discovered nationwide, 140, maybe somebody here has the exact number. Well, I think there's a lot of room for cooperation. First of all, I think Allison Chen there is at a school that does collaboration. It's an affiliate of the Feitian College system, which where many of the Shun's dancers and musicians have been trained, and they actually do collaboration activities with other schools as far as I know. So that's one thing. You can speak about that. Certainly we can look into an opportunity for schools to bring their students and their teachers to see traditional culture, not as portrayed by Confucius Institutes and Chinese Student and Scholar Associations and all these other programs. And we could certainly make some connections with that as well. Yeah. Allison?
Well, first of all, because I'm not currently with the company anymore, so I can't really speak on behalf of Shen Yun. But yeah, again, if there are collaboration opportunities, we're open to discussing and seeing how to make that possible to students. Currently, because I'm just at a branch campus of Feitian College, we're mostly working to help people see what Chinese culture and dance is about, just establish a basic understanding about the beauty and the grace of this art form. So it's we have been doing quite a bit of outreach opportunities with other organizations. So that's something we could talk about later. Yeah.
I'd like to add, I think it's really inspiring to hear that a lot of people, a lot more people are aware of what's going on with the transnational repression now, but it's really that the discussions are just starting and that more discussions need to happen from here. And I feel like this press conference is part of that. It's starting a discussion, and things need to happen with different organizations saying, oh, I can relate to that. I've seen that in my community. Let's talk about it. Let's do things. Let's make something happen. And I think that there's a lot of things that can happen from here, and this is a starting point.
Thank you.
This question may be directed to Levi or Lishai. When it comes to the weaponization of our institutions, there seems to be a lot of moving pieces, and it seems very complicated. If you could sort of elaborate on this, and also the calls that we heard from the petition, Kay announcing the petition, the calls for the Department of Justice to look into it, what would they be looking for exactly?
And again, I recognize this is a challenge because, my father was a professor of constitutional law. There was a lot of discussion about the framers around our dinner table growing up. This is a great country for the freedoms it has, the civil liberties, and whatever solution we come up with needs to maintain that. We're not giving that up. However, we have a threat that the framers could never even conceived of in a million years. And I think we need to look at the implements for strengthening that. And the first place to start, perhaps, aside from what the petition is calling for, to have these institutions, Congress, Department of Homeland Security, DOJ looking at this, look at the weapons that we have right now, for example, the FARA regulations. Now, are those strong enough? Those were formulated many years ago. Are they strong enough so that we can identify someone who's truly working as a foreign agent and somehow operating a foreign malign influence operation here? Not nearly strong enough. And it's now we have so many examples of Chinese spies and espionage and everything that these guys have been talking about to recognize that's not strong enough. So we need legal mechanisms that at first, at least, requires transparency. So we know when an individual organization truly is working on behalf of Beijing, and then going the next step to be able to strengthen our ability legislatively, in terms of the executive branch, to take action on that. It's very weak, and it's decades behind the threat that Beijing actually poses.
Go ahead. To your right.
Yeah, so this is Felicia. I'm Alan Zing with the Sound of Hope radio. And with the spiked activity of interference, and also with the, 10 article reporting by the New York Times, has that, how has that impacted Shen Yun attendance negatively, if you notice?
I have anecdotal evidence that in some parts of the country it has affected attendance. We'll see what it's like here in New York. Traditionally, we're used to the theaters being completely full. Certainly not in the beginning when we first started. We definitely had growing pains there, and we had some performances that were not well attended at all. But that was way back. And then for years it was full. In the beginning, said, "Oh, we have a full house today." Then after a while, we stopped even saying that. There was no point. It was always a full house. We didn't even ask how ticket sales are. This year is a little different. Now, there's a lot of factors. There's the economy. There's other things going on. So I can't say for sure. But we did have a few people, anecdotally, who did call in to say they're not going to support us because of the stuff that they read. We've had a few people cancel because of bomb threats, say that we support you, but we understand that these are fake bomb threats. They're scare tactics, but we still are going to keep our distance. So what that number is, I don't know. But I can tell you just from the eyeball test, I do honestly feel like it has affected ticket sales somewhat. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wondering, since the recent changes that, as Lisha you mentioned, how this threat to Shen Yun happened, what kind of responses you have been getting from the audience or from the general public in the United States to prompt you to have responses like, including this press conference, making you feel so important to do this?
This is fairly subjective. It's an experience. Just when you're on stage as a dancer or as an MC, you can kind of feel the audience a little bit. You kind of have a sense for how a joke is going to land and how they're reacting to things. We had, I remember early on in tour, a performance in San Antonio where we got a bomb threat, and the next day, it wasn't super well attended. I don't know how much of the word got out or what, but it felt like the audience that was there was really with us. They came in spite of the threat, in spite of the coverage, and they were on our side. It was just the support that we got from them it was unbelievable in terms of just the vibe, the energy in the room. I know that's not something very scientific, but for me personally, that's one thing that I felt. And I remember talking to people after the show. It felt like this audience was different, and we felt that other times during tour as well. Be curious to hear what other people have to say. But I'll just say we do want to really thank the theaters and the law enforcement, wherever we've gone. At the Kennedy Center, for example, the Park Police, Capitol Police, they were amazing. Kept everybody in order and everybody calm, and they did their thing, and they stood out there in the cold with us, and they have their sniff dogs and everything. Even though we know these are pranks, these are attempts to scare everybody, we still take the audience's safety very, very seriously. As is a theater, they have their protocols. And so we've had the canines. We've seen a lot of dogs this tour. They do their thing. They've had metal detectors in some cases, and we really appreciate that. And we appreciate the theaters for not, freaking out, because this is very unusual, I think, for a performing arts company to get a bomb threat like that on the morning of a show, which is often when they come in. So we really thank them. But I'm curious if you guys have had any feeling of the audience's reaction and how much they've been impacted. I actually asked one of the principal dancers in my group. My group was just in Chicago yesterday, Angela Lynn. I asked her what she felt about this. She said she found it completely ridiculous because the only other times I've heard of bomb threats are from terrorist groups like ISIS. To send a bomb threat to a performing arts company is completely outrageous, especially on American soil. But for us artists with a mission to stop this persecution, and for those artists whose lives are directly affected because of this persecution, we won't be stopped. That was her quote about the bomb threats.
Well, again, it's me. My question is this. There's two ways to handle this issue. Because you are a performing company, right? You want to success of your performance. One way is to just downplay this, just hide it. Another way is, like, what do? You go right up front to this. What's your decision process? And what's your thinking process? Why do you take this approach?
Well, I can only speak for myself. I can't really represent the entire company policy here. When it first started, I think we were mostly concerned about making sure the theaters understand what's going on in the context of everything and not scaring the audience, because there was no reason to be afraid. The theaters were checked. We knew that these were routine scare tactics that we're getting, and so we didn't really make a big deal of it. But when we're at the Kennedy Center and the entire complex of 6 buildings was evacuated, multiple performing arts companies, and the media was there and with their cameras, and the first reporter I talked to was just standing there grabbing some guy with a cello who happened to walk by saying, "What's going on?" And the guy said, "I don't know, I'm going to get coffee." So I said, "Okay, let me tell you what's going on." And the time came for people to know what we're facing. And We are facing a large-scale battle that, as Levi said, is part of a much bigger context that Americans and the rest of the free world is facing right now. We're on the front line of it, sometimes center stage, sometimes at a press conference, and we feel like it's a good opportunity, it's a good time for Americans to know about this, to understand what's going on, and we really appreciate the support of the people who know what's going on and still come and see the show. Kennedy Center, it happened the first day. We were there for 12 more shows after that. And the audience attendance was pretty good. A lot of people, thousands of people still came, in spite of it being all over the news. Yeah.
I just kind of want to add on to this. It's a little bit of a tangent because I'm currently not touring with the company, but I've been thinking about it, how the bomb threats and all the CCP threats have been affecting us negatively. And it really is a threat to us as Americans, because I grew up here in America. I was born and raised here. I've never been to China. And when I was growing up, we've always been told, oh, here we're free. You know, you're free to believe, you're free to speak what you feel. You have that freedom to, practice any religion that you want. And even with the persecution happening, I never really related to it because I had so much freedom here. I didn't face any physical harm or any safety concerns until later on when I started performing with Shen Yun, and then that's when I started having a little bit of more of a sense of I need to protect myself, I need to keep my friends safe. But now I feel like a lot of our American values are being endangered, and it's on a physical level, yeah, there are those safety concerns with the bomb threats, but also from a psychological level and a spiritual level, a lot of our American values are being threatened just from this CCP infiltration. I would say, like, even for myself, I'm not performing with the company, but a lot of people try to disassociate themselves with me now. They don't want to communicate with me, or they don't want to collaborate with me sometimes purely just because they know I practice Falun Gong, or because they know I used to dance with Shen Yun. Where I work now at Feitian College at Middletown, we're not a religious school, and we have students who don't practice Falun Gong who come in to study with us. But even so, a lot of people just label me as part of this Falun Gong sort of cult, sort of this religion, and I get discriminated sometimes. A lot of times people just won't want to connect with us simply because they hear all these lies and rumors that the CCP has spread. So I think that's another angle to look at it, and to be aware of, that really we're being attacked on multiple levels.
Yeah, last question. So have you considered that any countermeasure to bring a lawsuit to New York Times, and also with the DOJ? Have you filed a petition? What's their response thus far?
I don't know if any of the other panelists are aware of anything. I'm not aware of something like that at the moment.
We're looking at all options, and again, the first priority is to make this community safe. The second priority is to make sure this country is safe. And so whatever lawyers we need to talk to, government agencies, we're engaging to make sure that happens. Yeah.
And with regard to the petition, today was the first time that we've actually unveiled it, and so it's ready to take the next steps, which are to happen. So, but today is actually the first announcement of the results.
Let's pass on the mic. We can come back to you if you want.
Thank you, everyone, to create this event to raise the awareness of CCP threats. Lisha just mentioned Shen Yun got more than 30 bomb threats in this tour, and more threats for the Shen Yun campus. There are lots of teenagers in Shen Yun campus. How they react as a Falun Dafa practitioner, and does it harm to the teens? How do they, performers, if there has any, harms in the hearts, like trauma or something like that?
my son is here. He's in his early 20s, and my daughter is 18, touring with Shen Yun. And everyone has a different personality, right? So when I asked them immediately, what do you think? What's your reaction? And my daughter said, I'm devastated. How could they think this about us? This is horrible. She was very upset. And then, I asked my son, and he's like, why should I care what other people think? I'm doing the right thing. Everyone's different. And I don't remember the exact number of teenagers, but there's not that many teenagers. The New York Times makes it look like there's a lot, but there's not. Majority are professionals or college students who are not minors. So I don't have the exact numbers there.
I can give that real quick before we continue. On average, in our performing arts companies, 85% of touring members are adults, and then the remaining spots are for students on practicum who have earned the right to be there as part of the company. That's very different from what's being depicted in the media. But we do have young students who are, in their teen years training. Peter, you've taught some of them, right? How are people taking this on campus?
So I can only speak for myself personally. I think whenever we get these bomb threats, we're not actually scared, because that proves that the CCP is scared of us. That's why they're trying to stop us. But on the other hand, I think it's very unfair to the audience members, because they had nothing to do with this, and then all we're trying to do is to put on a good show and make the audience happy. And then whenever we hear about these bomb threats, we just think that's just so unfair. But for us, I think it will not stop us, it will not deter us, and then we'll just keep pushing forward.
We have had to up our security measures in terms of just practically speaking, but we had to start doing that a few years ago when we started having the tires on our buses slashed. I got a picture of that here. So this happened for the first time in Canada. It happened again in Costa Mesa. This is Costa Mesa, California, last March. You see there's a cut here in a crescent shape. Same exact cut on multiple other vehicles. When it was brought to the garage, the mechanic said, this is really interesting, because this cut was done with a knife. It's very deep, but it was done in such a way that the tire would not deflate, but would only explode at high speeds on the highway. And it was done on the front tire of the bus, which would lead to easily losing control of the vehicle at 60, 70 miles an hour with 30, 40 people on board. So since we started discovering these, and we have our pre-trip inspections and all that stuff, we have 24-hour security on our vehicles. In spite of that, we still had 2 incidents, one more just a couple weeks ago in California again, where when the bus was in a garage, somebody went and either did a cut, in this case in Costa Mesa, or put a screw inside the inner tube without a screw coming in from the outside. So that's in spite of us having security all the time. On our campus, a couple hours from here, we have security. We have security at our gates. That's one of the reasons why you can't just go there on a tour right now, but we do hope to be able to do that in the future. So we do have security. We have security when we tour. We have security in the theater. And we're working with the theaters and law enforcement to make sure everybody's safe in our performances. So it is a concern from that perspective. But as Peter said, that's the reaction I get from all the dancers. They're like, yeah, but it's not a real threat. We're going to focus on our art. And they're very good at what they do, and they're very dedicated, as you heard. And that's where their focus is. Yeah, please.
Yeah. Just as Levi was saying, most of us students, speaking from my perspective, we just want to go to school, get a good education, and be the best artists that we can. It's what have we done to deserve these bomb threats, these death threats? It doesn't really make sense.
And actually, from the perspective of an educator, I think it's also really unfair to the students, because, like what Lee said, they're really just trying to work hard and perfect their craft and learn as much as they can. But these bomb threats, it's almost like a distraction and a deterrent that pulls them away from focusing on trying to learn. I'm pretty sure most performing arts companies in America
are not faced with this challenge. And that's something that we have to deal with, or us as Shen Yun Performing Arts, they have to deal with almost on a daily basis. They always have to be constantly aware of their safety. And these students, they have to put up with extra, another burden to when they hear about these things. I know they kind of brush it off and say, oh, it's not really a big deal. But what if something actually is going to happen? So I think that's another question that we need to pose, and that's why we do take security pretty seriously. Look, as a parent, I'm a mother of 2 kids, right? You see that slice on a tire? What's going to happen on a bus driving 65 miles an hour? That's not a threat. Look, to me, I say that's attempted murder. That's completely unacceptable. For that to happen once is bad enough. Again and again? No, it's not. It's not acceptable. So, I think it's a fantastic, the artists are focused and dedicated, and I admire that. But, I'm a parent sitting at home going, okay, there's another bomb threat. Okay, I know it's a threat. But when you see the tires slashing like that, that is completely unacceptable. That is not a threat. That's attempted murder there on a bus. Not just the people on the bus, but what would happen to all the vehicles on the highway? Seriously, this is much more beyond threats. It is completely unacceptable. That's what I want to say.
Okay. It is now 3:30, and I'm afraid that I promised Peter, Rachel, and Lee that they'll be back. You hear some of the rehearsal already in the background. They have spacing and a performance to get ready for. However, a few of us will stay behind if you have in-person questions that you want to continue asking. Thank you very much for your time.
That was a press conference hosted by Shen Yun Performing Arts at Lincoln Center in New York City, focusing on the transnational repression that this classical Chinese dance group is facing around the world. Li Shai Lemish, host and spokesperson for Shen Yun Performing Arts, detailed how the dance group has received dozens of bomb threats so far this year, an almost tenfold increase since the same time last year. And it does go hand in hand with the Chinese Communist Party's enhanced campaign to stop Shen Yun, which exposes the Chinese Communist Party's persecution of Falun Gong in China in at least one of their dances every show. Thank you for watching. Coming up, Trump's pick for NIH head is confirmed by the Senate. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya called for a herd immunity approach to managing the COVID virus and is committed to addressing chronic disease. That and more after the break.
Heavenly beauty unfolds on stage. A lost civilization revived. Experience China's 5,000 years of wonder before communism. Breathtaking, inspiring. See it at least once in your lifetime. Shen Yun coming to Lincoln Center March 26th to April 13th. Buy tickets now at shenyun.com.
As we naturally age, many people are getting zero amount of this incredible and unique substance. That's when we start seeing an impact in our joints, skin, nails, and even our digestion.
People ask me, Dr. X, what is the #1 supplement I should be taking? My answer is multi-collagen protein.
People's reactions to me, people were like, what are you doing? What is going on? You look amazing. You have a glow about you.
What makes Ancient Nutrition Multi-Collagen stand out from other brands? 10 types of collagen. It's grass-fed, pasture-raised with vitamin C and probiotics. It's proven to reduce joint discomfort rapidly, continuously, and persistently. It improves the appearance of crow's feet after 4 weeks and improves skin tone after 8 weeks. And it promotes hair thickness, growth, and a reduction in hair breakage.
It has transformed everything from my hair. Like, my hair was starting to kind of just, come out, and I don't have that anymore. My skin feels amazing.
Call the number on your screen and find out how to get a free bottle when you order, plus free shipping and our 30-day money-back guarantee. And as a bonus, we will include Dr. Josh Axe and Jordan Rubin's revolutionary book, Multi-Collagen Makeover, free with your order, plus free shipping and free returns.
I have implicit trust in Dr. Axe because the plan worked. I am living proof of it.
This is the collagen protein that is backed by clinical studies. It's what my family uses, it's what I use, and I know you're gonna benefit in a big way as well.
Love the results or get your money back. This special TV offer is not available in stores. Call the number on your screen or go online now.
We said we'd never give in to a meltdown.
Mariella!
Never leave the house looking, well, and never let them out of our sight. Cars get hot fast, and kids can be at risk. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock.
Welcome back. President Donald Trump's nominee for director of the National Institute of Health is confirmed by the Senate. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya won a 53-47 vote. Bhattacharya holds multiple doctoral degrees from Stanford University. He entered the national spotlight during the pandemic when he co-authored the Great Barrington Declaration, which called for a traditional approach to pandemic management. He plans to work with Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to focus federal health agencies on addressing chronic disease in the United States. Joining us to explain Bhattacharya and what his confirmation means for America is physician, biochemist, and vaccinologist Dr. Robert Malone. Dr. Malone, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me on.
What do you think President Trump sees in Dr. Bhattacharya that led to his nomination for NIH director?
Well, I think Bobby was the big advocate for Jay. Jay is really a nice guy. He's been a truth teller. He's exactly what NIH needs now after the era of Francis Collins and Tony Fauci and all of those manipulations and misstatements that went down, not the least of which was the personal attacks on Jay himself because he signed and helped prepare the Great Barrington Declaration. But he actually did something even more important than that before the Barrington Declaration. And that was, he did a study at Stanford University as opposed to the, quote, modeling from the Imperial College in London that indicated a 3.4% case fatality rate for COVID. Jay actually did the study and demonstrated that the death rate from COVID, the mortality and morbidity, was pretty close to that of a severe seasonal influenza. And that's often overlooked, but that was the seminal study that if the world had paid attention to, we would have had a very different time course. So Jay is somebody who has done the right science at the right time, took the right moral stand, and he's a nice guy to boot. So what's not to like?
And he did win an award for his stance on COVID, for the, his bravery to counteract the narrative that was dominating at the time. Now, Bhattacharya was confirmed in the Senate along party lines. What do you think makes him so controversial?
He's not controversial. This party line vote is more of an indication of what's going on with the Democrat Party right now. There is no reason not to like Jay Bhattacharya. He's eminently qualified. There were no major objections to his nomination. And this is just strictly party line Democrat obstructionism, like we're seeing with their weaponization of the judiciary to try to block virtually every single executive order that they can coming out of Donald Trump. I think this is going to backfire at the midterms to the extent that Trump's agenda and the Make America Healthy Again agenda isn't captured and doesn't advance as well as it might. It's going to make it possible for the Republican Party to point to the Democrat obstructionism and say that this is the reason why they need an even a larger majority in both Senate and House at the midterm elections.
Bhattacharya was, of course, critical of mass vaccination during the COVID pandemic. What do you say to the parent concerned about his stance on vaccines?
Jay's stance on vaccines has actually been fairly moderate and more moderate than mine. Jay continued to stick to the narrative that it was appropriate to administer these products to those that were at high risk. So he's absolutely not anti-vaccine. He's pro-science. He based on his analysis, remember, he is a card-carrying senior epidemiologist, ran his own department from one of the top universities in the world. And it was his assessment that the risk-benefit ratio for these vaccines was only appropriate in high-risk groups. That's the elderly and those that have various metabolic disorders or other forms of disease. And so he stuck to that all the way through. The parent that might be so concerned is really being misdirected by false narratives in the media right now. Jay is a moderate.
You know, it's interesting to hear you say that in response to, the way we've heard coverage surrounding Bhattacharya. Now, what could we see from him in terms of addressing the chronic disease epidemic in America?
So remember that NIH is not in a position to set federal policy. Their mission is to do federal research and basic research. They're a fundamental aspect of the federal research and development enterprise. So what we'll see, I believe, under Jay's leadership is a restructuring and redirection of NIH away from developing proprietary pharmaceuticals and supporting the pharmaceutical industry towards better understanding chronic disease, the things that are really making America sick, so that we can mitigate those risks. So right now, NIH is very focused on just producing pharmaceuticals, interventions, drugs, and patenting and licensing those. We need an NIH that's focused on the big picture issues. Why are Americans dying at a higher rate? Why do we have, I think we're 20th or 28th in the West in terms of healthcare outcomes. We have a shorter lifespan than we had even 5 years ago. We have an epidemic of obesity and a variety of chronic diseases, and these are not being adequately addressed by the current NIH. This needs to be better understood so that we can move forward and guide Americans towards a more healthy lifestyle. Truly make America healthy again. Making America healthy again doesn't require that we have new pharmaceuticals. It requires that we have less chronic disease.
So, Dr. Malone, now we're talking, of course, about mitigating the chronic disease epidemic in America, not specifically addressing the way viruses spread, but NTD is following a virus spreading in China right now. It seems like things there could be worse than authorities are letting on. I mean, for example, people there are being silenced for speaking out, just like in 2019. How do you think a potential second pandemic would play out under Dr. Bhattacharya?
Jay, you're misunderstanding the role of the NIH. So pandemic preparedness is a separate office, and pandemic response is also a separate office. NIH is focused more on basic discovery, research, and development. And so I don't think that Jay is going to play a major role if we do have such an event of an infectious disease outbreak that meets the criteria of a pandemic. Frankly, I think that it's highly unlikely that we will have such. I believe that many of these narratives that are being actively promoted, like bird flu, remember human metapneumovirus? That was the last big boogeyman that was supposed to come out of China. But human metapneumovirus is endemic all over the United States. It has been for decades. A lot of these narratives that you're hearing are basically promoting fear. And it's always possible that there is a new upper respiratory or highly infectious agent circulating in China. And it's the norm that the Chinese public health officials will suppress that. That's their standard operating procedure. But I don't think that Jay is going to do anything more than insist that if we do have an outbreak, that we have accurate data. Jay has taken the position that it's not the place of public health to set public policy. That's the role of the political class. The role of public health and public health officers like Jay Bhattacharya is to provide high quality information to the decision makers. And so Jay he's explicitly not going to be in a position like Tony Fauci took, in which he was basically dictating in an arbitrary and capricious fashion public policy, like these arbitrary lockdowns and social distancing and unscientific mask use, etc. You're not going to see that coming out of Jay. You're going to see a mature focus on getting accurate information and providing that up the chain to people like Bobby Kennedy and, of course, the president to make the informed decisions that they need to make as the elected officials. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And before we wrap up, Dr. Malone, just in the last minute or so here, there's been outcry from the Make America Healthy Again community over Trump's pick for CDC Director Susan Monarez. Some say she's too establishment, but you and HHS Secretary Kennedy think she's a good pick. What's the controversy here, and what's your view on that?
So she has a long history of top secret clearance. She has been very much inside the mechanisms of the biodefense industrial complex. Her most recent position was at ARPA-H, which is a dark funded agency branch of NIH. And when she was there, she was involved in a variety of programs, some of which were very DEI oriented. But one in particular was focused on application of artificial intelligence to enable better analysis of health-related data. And that's the strong suit that she's bringing to the CDC. This is Bobby's pick. Bobby enthusiastically supports her on the basis, if nothing else, that is the last 2 months of her serving as interim director of CDC, she has gone to town against the people that are attempting to obstruct access to data like the VAERS system. And she's not taking any prisoners. She is working through the CDC and is absolutely committed to aggressive reform and is unwilling to back off from these people that are so entrenched at the CDC, that are trying to defend their own turf, their own privilege, and to obscure what they've done over the last 5 years. This is somebody who brings a lot of intelligence, a lot of energy, a lot of insight into her job. And this is not the typical CDC director, that's true. This is not a feel-good Rochelle Walensky, I'm going to, fill your ears with whatever the propaganda is that the CDC is feeding her. This is a doer. This is somebody who is going in and really taking that institution apart and restructuring it. And if people aren't willing to go along with oversight and reform, they are having an opportunity to find new employment outside of the federal government quite quickly. She's working closely with DOGE and doing so effectively.
Well, it does sound like a change compared to the previous administration. Dr. Robert Malone, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Next, President Trump participates in a Women's History Month event at the White House. Let's take a look.
Agrees with that in this room? I was thinking maybe somebody from the press might raise their hand. I don't think so. There aren't too many people. It's amazing. It's got to be like a 98% issue, right? So what are they doing, Marjorie? What are they doing? They're fighting for a 2% issue. That's good. Let them keep doing it. No matter how many surgeries you have or chemicals you inject, if you're born with male DNA in every cell of your body, you can never become a woman. You're not going to be a woman. And that's why last month I proudly signed a historic executive order to ban men from competing in women's sports, and it was very popular and very popular. We had a track meet, and it was so disparaging to great women athletes. I've known so many great women athletes. I gave Annika Sorenstam the Medal of Freedom here not so long ago, and these are unbelievable athletes, but it's so ridiculous. They had a track meet, and you heard me talking about long-distance track meet. The man won by 5 hours and 14 minutes and 12 seconds, and I said, this is not good. And you want to see worse? Take a look at the weightlifting records. Take a look at the boxing. Take a look at this. The whole thing is ridiculous, and frankly, it's demeaning to women, and you are superior to men, in my opinion. What do I know? You are. I've seen you. No, they are superior. I've known it all my life, and I'm not happy about it. I'm not happy. I also banned puberty blockers. Can you believe I'm even saying this? And the sexual mutilation of minor youth. Now, who would think, let's go back 10 or 15 years. If you ever heard a statement like that, you'd say, what the hell is he even talking about, right, Brooke? What is he talking about? Puberty blockers. But that's where we are. That's where we've come, and we're ending it. We're sending it back to where it came from, oblivion, right? So in the recent election, we did fantastically well with women. I kept hearing, women don't like them. I said, I think they do. Don't like, fake polls don't like me. That's who don't like me. But we're setting records in so many of these cases, and I was for women. I was for the women, the suburban housewife, where I stopped low-income housing projects from being built at a house next to you, where people were being decimated. The houses were being literally ripped up and destroyed. And I stopped it, and we've stopped it again. We had to stop it again. I stopped it first term. We had a great first term, a really successful first term. We had the largest increase in stock market value, 88% increase in the history of our country. We gave you the biggest tax cuts. We gave you the biggest regulation cuts. We rebuilt our military. We gave too much of it away to Afghanistan, this character. He gave billions and billions of dollars of it away to Afghanistan. And maybe we'll have to ask for that back, although it's getting a little old now. They're getting a little old. We're building new stuff. But I will say that it was such an honor working with so many great women. I've worked with women all my life. I've always been ahead on that subject. I had women in my construction business putting up skyscrapers in New York 30 years ago, 35 years ago, long before it was in vogue, and they were phenomenal. Every one of them was phenomenal. My administration listens to America's moms, and that's why I recently created the Presidential Commission to make America healthy again, and that's really caught on. That's really caught on. And Bobby Kennedy, by the way, is doing a great job. I think it's going to go down as another great choice. And we just don't want to treat the chronic disease crisis. We want to prevent our children from getting sick in the first place. And there are so many things that we are doing wrong. Something happened. If you go back 20 years, autism, think of it, 1 in 20,000 children. Think of that, 1 autism. You see it all over. 1 in 20,000 children. Now it's 1 in 36 children. Now, what the hell is that all about? There's something out there, and we got to find it. But can you imagine 1 in 20,000, and now it's 1 in 36, not 36,000, 1 in 36 children. And I see it all the time. And so there's something out there, and we're going to find it. We're doing something really wrong, and it might be very simple to even correct, but we're looking very hard, and Bobby's looking very hard, and we're going to figure it out. And to further support our nation's mothers, I've signed an executive order to expand access to fertility treatments like IVF. That's Katie. Katie. Where's Katie? Katie called your great senator from Alabama. She called, and she was like in a little bit of angst, right? She said, sir, we just had a ruling from an Alabama judge who said you couldn't have the clinics IVF. And I was in my plane, and she said, it's terrible, it's terrible. Friends of mine are virtually attacking me, and said, because they're not really, people don't talk about it necessarily, and why should they? But Katie called me up. She did such a great job, and she said, sir, you have to get on this right away. It's terrible. They're going to close up all the clinics. They ordered all the clinics closed. And I said, so Katie, give me a quick definition, please. Educate me in a minute or less. And she did. And I came out totally in favor of what all of these women wanted. And it became our issue. We actually took it away, Mike, from the Democrats. They were late to the party. And it was really, I give you a lot of credit. So thank you very much. Thank you, Katie. Great job. And I also signed an executive order to begin abolishing the Department of Education, as we said, but also to go back and do things with our school children that just hasn't been done in many, many years. But the basic is reading, writing, and arithmetic, and we want to make sure that they teach English, okay? But I think we're not going to have a problem, and you're going to see things happen, I think, on the education front like nobody can believe. It's very exciting. Very exciting. And so many of the states like Iowa and Idaho and Indiana, by the way, unrelated, but Indiana, they just signed Honda, one of the biggest auto plants in the world, is going, Honda, big company, would have never come here except for, let's say, the election. I like to say the election result, but let's give tariffs a little well, without the election result, you wouldn't have the tariffs, right? So I guess it's all about the election, Marjorie. But one of the biggest anywhere in the world. They're building in Indiana, big plant, and we have many of them going up. Many plants in other countries have stopped. They've stopped construction. One of them, right in the middle of construction, they just signed a contract. They're going to build it here instead. So you're going to see that at record. Just remember, I told you so in 12 months from now. But on day one, we're ending the inflation nightmare that Joe Biden created and caused, but just by his spending, two things, his spending, but I think more important, he destroyed our energy policy, and energy started going up, gasoline, any form of energy went through the roof. And then what he did to get it down a little bit, he went back to the Trump policy. Everything, let him drill, let him, they were very, very concerned. And it was too late because that jackrabbit had gotten out of the nest, and it was too late. They really screwed us up in so many ways. How about allowing millions and millions of people to come into our country, open borders, people from all over the world, not South America, but all over the world. They came in from Africa, from Asia, from all over the world, from prisons. The prisons were emptied into our country. I call them prisons and jails, prison being a slightly tougher term, but the prisons and jails were emptied into our country. The mental institutions and insane asylum, same thing. Insane asylum is mental institution on steroids, right? I used to say Dr. Hannibal Lecter, the great Dr. Hannibal Lecter is in a hotel room near you. And the fake news back there, a lot of fake news here, by the way. Fake news would say, why does he keep mentioning Hannibal Lecter? I said, you know why? Because we just won an election. We got a lot of votes because of Hannibal Lecter. We don't want to have Hannibal Lecter in our country. So we watched what was happening to destroy our country, and a woman, by the way, the head of Homeland, Christie is doing a great job. Kristi Noem. She's doing a great job. She's getting them out. And Tom Homan and Kristi Noem, they're doing an unbelievable job. She's tough. She might be tougher than Tom. Is that pretty tough, right? I say Tom is central casting, but he says, I think she might be tougher than me. So we needed that because she's dealing with a rough group of people. Millions and millions of people. 21 million people came in, but of that, at least 3 million are serious criminals. Many of them are murderers, 11,088. And of that number, about half have murdered more than one person. This is not going to end well. So we're getting them out in record numbers, and we're having a lot of problems with the courts because the courts want to pretend they're president. And they're not president. They didn't get 80 million votes, and they're not. They can't do that to this country. That's not their job. But we're getting them out in record numbers, and It's going to save a lot of lives. We got some really bad people in this country, but you see the ones we're taking out. Trendy Aragua, the toughest of all gangs, MS-13. And we're getting them out. So in just 2 months, core inflation has dropped to its lowest pace in 4 years. We've got it going down. The groceries I told you about, and energy of all kinds, gasoline, that's fallen below now $3. For $3 for the first time in years since I was there, it's fallen below $3. We're going to get it down quite a bit lower. That's going to bring prices still further down, and people are going to be able to buy their groceries again, and so important. And again, I want to just congratulate you, Brooke. What a job you've done over there with the eggs. I was in office for 1 week, and I got this one article was so bad that Donald Trump has caused a massive egg problem. And I said, this is, and they showed it. It's like, terrible. But it was during his term that it went up, right? And but they were hammering me. They thought they had us until I put you in that position. And I don't know what the hell magic wand you use. And now they don't talk about it anymore. It's terrible. Well, we'll talk. We have to talk about it, If they don't talk about it, we talk about it, right, Brooke? But what a job you've done. Now we need Congress to pass the largest tax cuts in American history, and Mike is going to get that. And I think we can finally say one big, beautiful bill, because everybody's there. I spoke with John Thune, is doing a terrific job also, and the senators, and we want one big, beautiful bill. Just put it all in that bill, and we'll figure a way to have it passed, right? We'll figure a way. But it'll be the largest tax cuts in American history. When you add that onto the fact that if they don't pass this, you will have the largest tax increase by far, because the tax increase that I passed 5 years ago, the biggest in history, bigger than the Reagan tax cuts, what happens is that jumps back to where they used to be. So if you add that onto the other normal tax increases that the Democrats want to give, this would be the largest tax increase in history by 58% or more, I guess, but 58%. And I don't know how anybody can vote for a Democrat, but I know one thing, that I believe the Democrats are going to be forced to help vote for this bill. And then we have the very important continuation of debt. I don't call it a debt increase, because we're not looking to increase. We want to just continue that line, and we should call it, I think, from now on, Mike, we're going to call it the continuation, because that's what it is. That was thrown into our lap unnecessarily, but we have it, and it's fine that we have it. But I think we're going to get tremendous support even from Democrats, because otherwise they're voting for the biggest tax increase in history by far, by, I think, 38 points. And I don't think they're going to want to do that. So, Mike, I hear you're doing great on it. And we're going to have tremendous goodies in the bag for women, too. The women, between the fertilization and all of the other things that we're talking about, it's going to be great. We're joined today, fertilization. I'm still very proud of it. I don't care. I'll be known as the fertilization president, and that's okay. That's not bad. That's not bad. I've been called much worse. Actually, I like it, right? I like it. Thank you. We're joined today by many of the women members of the House and Senate who make up so much and make this all happen. And I especially want to recognize the leaders of the brand new Republican Women's Caucus, Senator Katie Britt. Again, Katie, thank you. Thank you, Katie. Great job you do. And Representative Kat Kamek, who just announced a new baby girl. That's great. I also want to say driving force behind the effort to create a women's history museum, with working very much with some of the women in this room. I'm not sure if it's been discussed specifically, but to create a women's museum on the National Mall. And we have a great site. I'm very good at real estate, We have a great site. And Nicole Maliotakis is here someplace. Where's Nicole? And she is really working hard on this one. This is a passion for you, and you're working. It's a big, beautiful. She said it's going to be a big, beautiful museum. Well, it has to be. If it's for women, it better be big and beautiful, or we're in trouble, right? but we're working on that. Also here, I just have this list, and they're incredible people, so I have to do it. Otherwise, I'll be run out of town. I don't have the courage not to do it. Senator Marsha Blackburn. Marsha, thank you very much. So incredible. Unbelievable talent. Senator Joni Ernst. Joni Ernst. Where's Joni? Hi, Joni. I owe you a call. I'll call you. Okay? Deb Fisher just won a great race, Nebraska. Thank you, Deb. Great race, Deb. Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. Oh, we love Cindy Hyde. Thank you, Cindy Hyde. She said, sir, could you do a rally for me? I said, yeah, I'll do a rally for you. I get this. Sir, could you do 2 more for me? I did. We did 3, and we blew him out, right? It was an Obama.
And you're watching just now President Trump speaking at a Women's History Month event at the White House. Meanwhile, the White House says President Trump has seen the signal messages published by The Atlantic, and Elon Musk's team will join the National Security Council in investigating how the leak happened. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. Good afternoon, Iris. How's the White House responding as more texts from the Signal Group have now been published?
Good afternoon to you, Don. So the White House is stressing that there's been no classified information shared on that Signal chat group where the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic magazine was inadvertently added when top administration officials were discussing plans to strike the Houthis in Yemen, which did happen about 10 days ago. According to new screenshots published by The Atlantic this morning, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth did specify the types of U.S. military aircraft as well as the timing of the airstrikes in that group chat. But the White House, while acknowledging that these were sensitive policy discussions, also echoed Hegseth's statement this morning, saying that there were no names, no targets, no locations, no units, no routes, no sources, no methods, and no classified information. The White House also criticized The Atlantic for what it calls putting out a sensational spin to things, and also further alleges that there's been the coordinated campaign to try to sow chaos at the White House. Watch.
They are focused on a coordinated campaign to try and sow chaos in this White House. And this has been the most successful first 2 months of any administration ever, which is exactly why they are doing this. We are not going to bend in the face of this insincere outrage.
Meanwhile, some Democratic lawmakers continue to call for some officials involved to step down, saying that their handling of such information could endanger American troops. Watch.
It shows the kinds of planes, munitions, targets, timing that all could be highly valuable to our enemies in future missions.
The White House says President Trump remains confident in his national security team, adding that the administration is prioritizing national security and also specifying that the Signal app, which is an encrypted messaging app, has been approved for officials to use. Watch.
Signal has been an approved app for government use. It's an encrypted app. I think, as the president said yesterday, he wishes that everybody could be in the room. But again, no classified information was discussed in this chat. And any time classified information is discussed amongst high-level officials across this administration, secure lines of communication are used.
And the press secretary also told us that the White House counsel's office, the White House National Security Council, as well as experts brought in by Elon Musk, will be looking into how that reporter was inadvertently added to the Signal group. And that, the White House says, is to make sure there is a responsibility taken, as well as to make sure that this never happens again. Meanwhile, we will hear more from the president himself later this afternoon when he goes into the Oval Office to hold a press conference about his upcoming new auto tariffs. Back to you, Don.
Okay, Iris, thank you very much. Moments ago, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth talked to media from Hawaii en route to Guam. Take a look.
Good morning, everybody. What a beautiful day. It's always a beautiful day when we're on the road talking to the troops and actually, in real time, reestablishing deterrence. You see, that's what President Trump has charged the Defense Department with doing. Reviving the warrior ethos, rebuilding the military, which we're doing in real time, and reestablishing deterrence. And that's why we're heading out into the Indo-Pacific to talk to our allies and partners and meet with the troops. And anybody that knows me for years and knows President Trump knows how much we love the warriors. That's what it's about. The men and women who serve, who do the tough, difficult, gritty, dirty work that most Americans will never know about, but we have the privilege of seeing and understanding the courage and skill of what they do. I'm going to go see that for the next couple of days. We also have seen it on full display in what's been done to the Houthi terrorists and what they're trying to do to close freedom of navigation. You see, under the Biden administration, we let our troops and our ships and both warships and commercial ships get shot at to no consequence. What does that look like? That looks like weakness. And what President Trump has said is peace through strength is back. We will reestablish deterrence. That's not acceptable. And our ongoing campaign against the Houthis has been devastatingly effective. Now, as I said to this group a couple of times on this trip now, as we move to the Indo-Pacific to do our job, which is what we're here to do, nobody's texting war plans. Well, I noticed this morning out came something that doesn't look like war plans. And as a matter of fact, they even changed the title to attack plans because they know it's not war plans. There's no units, no locations, no routes, no flight paths, no sources, no methods, no classified information. You know who sees war plans? I see them every single day. I looked at them this morning. I looked at attack plans this morning. You know who does attack plans and war plans? Men like that admiral right there, Paparo, for the Indo-Pacific, or Eric Kurilla, our general in CENTCOM. They do attack plans and war plans. And thank God we have those leaders who do it and do it well, and our enemies know it. My job, as it said atop of that, everybody's seen it now, team update is to provide updates in real time, general updates in real time, keep everybody informed. That's what I did. That's my job. The war fighters will take the fight to the enemy, and I love what they do. And with President Trump's leadership, our enemies are on notice. We will have peace through strength, and we'll keep putting our troops first. Thank you very much. We're heading off.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio speaking in Kingston, Jamaica, alongside Jamaican Prime Minister Andrew Holness. Rubio addressed the signal messages leak, calling it a big mistake. But he also said the information shared in the group did not at any given point threaten the lives of U.S. servicemen.
The Pentagon's made clear that nothing on there would have endangered the lives or the mission, and the mission's been very successful.
Is it classified, the information?
Well, the Pentagon says it was not, and not only did they say it was not, they make very clear that it didn't put in danger anyone's life or the mission. There was no intelligence information. And understand, when this story first broke, they were sort of alluding to were there war maps, or this, and there was no war plans on there. This was a sort of description of what we could inform our counterparts around the world when the time came to do so. Again, look, I think the White House is looking at this entire thing. How did that journalist get on there? Why was this the appropriate? And I think there'll be reforms and changes made, so this was not going to happen again. It can't.
Rubio also gave the latest on the Black Sea ceasefire deal with Ukraine and Russia. He noted a framework of global sanctions against Russia that he said would have to be looked at as part of an end to the war in Ukraine.
After our meeting, as part of their release, the Russians detailed a number of conditions that they want to see met in order to do that. So we're going to evaluate that. Some of those conditions include sanctions that are not ours. They belong to the European Union. So we're going to be gathering and sort of, when our folks get back, sitting down, going through the proposals, getting their impressions of the conversations, so we can more fully understand what the Russian position is or what their ask is in exchange. And then we'll present that to the president, who will ultimately make a decision about what the next step here.
And coming up after the break, slashing development time to get a new Nissan on the road more quickly. That's just part of the restructuring strategy unveiled by the car maker's new CEO. Don't go away.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50 enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark. resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today.
Hi friends, Richard Karn here. Now I'm known as the guy who can fix just about anything, but the technology in most appliances requires very special training to fix. My point is, even I know when I've met my match, and that's why my family has Choice Home Warranty. So we won't get stuck with high-priced repairs.
Choice Home Warranty covers over 25 major home systems and appliances. That's your AC, heating, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and so much more.
Imagine for less than a cup of coffee a day, Choice Home Warranty can help protect you from expensive major system and appliance breakdowns that your homeowner's insurance doesn't cover. But you have to call now before it's too late.
Every homeowner should have Choice Home Warranty. Your homeowner's insurance is not going to cover your appliances.
Washing machine, dryer, refrigerator, air condition. If I had any issues arise, they were able to take care of it immediately.
Now, homeowner's insurance won't protect you when your home's major systems and appliances break down due to normal wear and tear. But Choice Home Warranty will. They can help cover repairs and replacements.
Choice Home Warranty is the best warranty we've ever used. It would save you so much money in the long run.
Hey, I'm not the only one raving about Choice Home Warranty. They were named a Best Home Warranty Company and Best Claim Service by U.S. News 360 Reviews.
Call Choice Home Warranty now and get access to a nationwide network of over 15,000 technicians and the latest appointment setting technology so you'll know when they're on their way.
If I have an issue with an appliance or something around the house, I just call up Choice Home Warranty and I don't have to worry about that.
So, do what this old DIYer did and call Choice Home Warranty now before something breaks down. Tell them I sent you and get your first month free.
Call Choice Home Warranty before it's too late and get protection for your heating, AC, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and more. Call for your free quote today. Call in the next 5 minutes and get your first month free. 800-360-6782. 800-360-6782.
You can talk to me if you're feeling sad.
Thanks for hearing me out, bro.
Whenever you need to talk, I'm here, okay?
And it's time for today's Business Matters. Nissan's new CEO is mapping out its restructuring plan, and that includes slashing vehicle development time. Right now, it takes about 55 months to completely develop a new vehicle. Ivan Espinosa said he wants to cut that down to 37 months. Espinosa is expected to refocus the automaker's priorities on developing vehicles more in tune with customers' tastes. He's working to steer the company out of a deep sales slump. Nissan has cut its earnings estimates 3 times for the year ending this month. As part of Nissan's restructuring plans, the automaker plans to cut 9,000 jobs and also close 3 plants, including one in Thailand. A test flight in the works. Airbus is entering the testing phase for a new engine with visible fan blades. The company hopes this plane will succeed in its best-selling A320 family of jets. Airbus will use a modified A380 Super Jumbo with an open fan engine. And this is to see the best way to power the next generation of single-aisle aircrafts. The new kind of engine is supposed to be more fuel efficient than existing models. Current aircraft use duct fan engines, which are enclosed in a casing. This is part of the global aviation industry's goal of making a net zero carbon contribution by 2050. The tests are expected to happen toward the end of the decade. A network of fake companies operated by a secretive Chinese tech firm are allegedly recruiting laid-off U.S. government workers. Researcher Max Lesser of think tank Foundation for Defense of Democracies uncovered the scheme. He said it follows techniques used by past intelligence operations. He said once recruited, the government workers could be asked to share sensitive information or be asked to recruit other targets. The job ads were posted on Craigslist, LinkedIn, and other job sites. CNN reported last month that China and Russia are targeting disgruntled U.S. government employees. Lester says his current findings could be concrete evidence of such operations. And shaky relations between China and Canada have been hit with a little jolt. Prime Minister Mark Carney said that China does not share Canada's values when it comes to trade. He warned that Canada needs to be very careful about boosting bilateral commercial ties. Carney said there's certain activity that Canada could have with China, but explained that it has to be very careful, very deliberate, and needs to meet Canadian standards. At a press conference, the Prime Minister said that there are Asian partners with shared values that Canada can build deeper ties with, but that does not include China. This comes at a time when both nations have imposed tariffs on each other's products. From your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man to the boy who lived, we now know who will be overseeing the next Bond film. Amazon MGM Studios has named Amy Pascal and David Heyman as the new producers. Pascal is known for her work in the 3 latest Spider-Man titles, and Heyman has worked on the Harry Potter saga since 2001. Now, in a post on X, the duo said they were humbled to follow the footsteps of siblings Barbara Broccoli and Michael Wilson. Amazon took creative control of the Bond franchise under a new joint venture with longtime rights holders Broccoli and Wilson. Fans are now waiting for the 26th Bond film and for the reveal of who dons the iconic tuxedo next. The U.S. has added over 50 Chinese entities to its export restrictions list. Among them was China's leading cloud computing and big data service provider. Here's a closer look.
Washington has added dozens of firms to its export blacklist. Most are in China, but others are in Taiwan, Iran, Pakistan, South Africa and the UAE. Among the most high-profile additions are 6 subsidiaries of Inspur Group, China's biggest cloud computing provider. They have been targeted for helping develop supercomputers for the country's military. Inspur Group itself was placed on the list 2 years ago. The US blacklist is meant to restrict Beijing's ability to develop cutting-edge systems for its armed forces. The US also wants to disrupt Iran's procurement of drones and other defense gear, and to slow its development of ballistic missiles and nuclear technology. Once firms are added to the blacklist, US companies are barred from selling to them without obtaining a license, which is almost certain to be denied. When Inspur Group was first placed on the list in 2023, executives from US chipmakers AMD and Nvidia were questioned about their dealings with the firm. On Tuesday, it wasn't clear if the US businesses had continued to supply subsidiaries of the Chinese company.
Meanwhile, a new startup is cruising into the e-bike industry. Rivian's new spin-off also will be focusing on micromobility. And these are lightweight vehicles, often electric-powered, like e-bikes and e-scooters. Rivian has been working on micromobility products using the company's electric vehicle technology. It filed their trademark 3 years ago for bicycles, electric bikes, and related parts. Also, will operate independently with minority ownership from Rivian. The micromobility startup is expected to reveal its products later this year, and the company plans to expand globally with its initial flagship products meant for the US and Europe set for 2026. And that's going to be followed by tailor-made EVs for Asia and South America. No boycott of US goods in Europe's biggest economy. Germany's government has rejected calls for the boycott amid disagreements over tariffs. Some have called on Europe to replace US products with home-based brands, similar to an initiative in Canada. But the German government says it wants to foster good trade relations. An association representing German importers and exporters is expressing a similar sentiment. The group said it supports dialogue with the US over trade rather than starting a cycle of boycotts, tariffs, and counter-tariffs. Calling all fans of the TV series The Office. You can now channel your love for the show at a new Chili's in Scranton, Pennsylvania. The restaurant chain is opening a new retro restaurant there that pays homage to the show. It's going to feature decor from iconic Office moments, including an early episode where Dunder Mifflin employees gather at Chili's to celebrate. The restaurant has also enlisted several Office actors to star in the ads. This is Chili's first location in Scranton, despite several memorable appearances on the show. It opens April 7th, 20 years after the iconic episode featuring the restaurant first aired. It's BYOE, bring your own eggs, for Walmart's holiday meal kits this year. The retail giant announced that it will be skipping the eggs, and this is because of course, the ongoing shortages and price hikes brought on by the bird flu outbreak. Eggs were a key part in last year's kit. A promotional image showed 18 large brown eggs as part of the box. A spokesperson said this year's basket doesn't include ingredients that are typically already found in a pantry, like salt, butter, milk, and eggs. Walmart's grocery revenue rose in the quarter that ended in January. The company noted revenue was partly boosted by egg price inflation. NBA star Steph Curry is teaming up with Michelle Obama. Their team up will usher in a new, healthier sports drink. The drink is called Pelzi Hydration. The drink will have no added sugar or artificial sweeteners, less sodium than rivals, and a full daily dose of vitamin C. Curry said in a statement, quote, "We've created something with smart ingredients and unbeatable flavor so people can fuel their bodies the right way, no nonsense, and no shortcuts." The drinks will be available in California at Walmart, Albertsons, and Safeway, and sold nationwide through Amazon. Each 16.9-ounce bottle will be priced at $2.29 and contains 70 calories. And there's consensus from the intelligence community. America's biggest threat right now is China. Intelligence agencies published their annual threat assessment yesterday. Here are the biggest findings on China.
At this point,
a new report from United States intelligence chiefs says the #1 threat to the United States comes from Communist China. The annual threat assessment says China has the ability to hit the U.S. with conventional weapons, compromise infrastructure through cyber attacks, and target its assets in space. It notes the Chinese army is expanding its capabilities and continuing to establish military bases overseas. The report says China has the capability to conduct long-range precision strikes on U.S. territories in the Pacific and as far as Hawaii and Alaska. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard said Tuesday, China has heavily invested in stealth aircraft, hypersonic weapons, and nuclear arms.
While it would like to develop and maintain positive ties with the United States and the Trump administration to advance its interests and avoid conflict, China is building its military capability in part to gain advantage in the event of a military conflict with the United States around the issue of China's efforts toward unification with the Republic of China, or Taiwan.
Gabbard's remarks came during her testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee during a hearing on worldwide threats to the U.S. The intelligence community report also says China is the most active and persistent cyber threat to the U.S. It noted that if Beijing believed a major conflict with Washington was imminent, it could launch aggressive cyber operations on critical U.S. infrastructure.
Critical infrastructure is a key area of concern, given what we know has already been exploited, these asymmetric attacks that have been placed within our critical infrastructure that are of serious concern, given how they could be exploited, especially during a time of conflict.
The report also says China is seeking to displace the U.S. as the top AI power by 2030. It suggests the Chinese military could use AI to generate misinformation. It says China has stolen hundreds of gigabytes of intellectual property to train its AI models.
We know that they are experiencing a boom in their generative AI capability and are competing very heavily against our own AI capabilities. Obviously, AI can and will be used across a multitude of every sector.
CIA Director John Radcliffe told the committee that China has only made intermittent efforts to stop the flow of precursor chemicals fueling the U.S. fentanyl crisis. He says that's because China is reluctant to crack down on lucrative businesses. The intelligence agency said China's long-term goal was to expand access to Greenland's natural resources. The report says it aims to use Greenland as a key strategic foothold in the Arctic. Still, the report says China faces daunting domestic challenges, corruption, demographic imbalances, and economic slowdown. It says Chinese officials appear to be bracing for more economic friction with the U.S. while looking for ways to prevent major escalation.
Dollar Tree is parting ways with Family Dollar, and this comes after purchasing the discount retailer a decade ago. Two private equity firms are set to buy Family Dollar for $1 billion. And that's just a fraction of the $9 billion the Dollar Tree spent buying it in 2015. The deal is pending regulatory approval, but is expected to go through next quarter. Tesla will soon start selling its electric cars in Saudi Arabia. The company says it will host a launch event in the kingdom on April 10th, showcasing its EVs as well as its AI and robotics technologies. The move into the Gulf's biggest economy comes amid slumping global sales for the car company, but gaining market share in oil-rich Saudi Arabia could be a challenge. Electric vehicles make up just 1% of all car sales in the country. Okay, now moving on to Wall Street, had a very strong performance in 2024, and more than 200,000 people working in the securities industry have benefited. Based on estimates just out, Wall Street bonuses hit a record high, according to the Office of New York State Comptroller. The average bonus paid to employees was nearly $245,000, and that's up 31.5% from the year before. That's 3 times higher than the $80,000 median U.S. household income reported by the U.S. Census for 2023. The big bonus payouts follow a 90% jump in Wall Street profits last year. Napster has been acquired. Yes, Napster still exists for those of you who remember it. The company started out decades ago, offering free peer-to-peer music downloads. It's now being turned into a digital space for music creators to interact with fans and offer a variety of services. NTD Sean Marshall has more.
Napster is attempting a comeback into the metaverse space, a company that possibly started the downfall of CD sales for the music industry in the early 2000s by offering free music downloads. That is, until being sued by music industry artists and sold, then eventually merged into a music streaming service. Now, Infinite Reality, a technology and entertainment company, announced today that they've entered into a definitive agreement to acquire the iconic online music brand Napster for $207 million. They plan to reimagine Napster using extended reality, or XR, creating a social music platform that prioritizes active fan engagement over passive listening, allowing artists to connect with, own, and monetize the relationship with their fans. According to an Infinite Reality's press release, the next level of Napster will create branded 3D virtual spaces where fans can enjoy virtual concerts, social listening parties, and other immersive and community-based experiences, sell both physical and virtual merchandise, exclusive digital content, and event tickets, and integrate gamification to increase fan engagement and loyalty. If you're wondering what Napster has been up to over the years, Napster is now a fully licensed independent music service. Over the past 2 decades, Napster has paid over $1 billion to artists and songwriters worldwide. It's one of the longest operating digital music services in the world. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
And stocks ended sharply lower today. It was dragged down by losses in Nvidia and Tesla. And this comes as investors awaited information about long-promised U.S. tariffs on automotive imports. So President Trump is set to announce plans for car industry tariffs at a press conference today. And it's potentially widening the global trade war that may be kicked off at the beginning of this year. Auto industry experts expect the move to drive up prices, and production as well may slow down. The main focus later this week, though, will be the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, and this is the Federal Reserve's favorite inflation gauge, due out on Friday. All right, that's it for today's Business Matters. Coming up after the break, the Supreme Court upholds rules requiring background checks for so-called ghost guns, giving gun control groups a rare win. We discuss the ruling with the guest panel when we come back.
If joint pain from aging is slowing you down, Omega XL can help you get back in the saddle, just like it did for John Walsh.
Today I'm here at my ranch exercising some of my polo ponies. Got to be really fit to ride these horses. So as you get older, it gets tougher. I was starting to suffer some of that business, and then I ran into somebody who said, look, you should try Omega XL, and look what it's done. I feel better than I've felt in the last 30 years.
I'm Rivian Walsh. I'm John Walsh's wife. I ride fox hunters, and sometimes I'm in the saddle for 3-5 hours at a time. A lot of work out here.
I wouldn't have been able to do this. Muck a stall, throw hay, do all the things that needs to be done on a ranch a couple years ago. But Omega XL gave me the ability to get back in the saddle. It works great.
Once you try it, you don't want to be without it. Makes a huge difference.
It does. Take it every single day, and you know, there's a benefit. It's made you a lot nicer to me.
If you've been living with pain, it's time to get this special offer, the Omega XL, the joint health supplement that millions have trusted for more than 20 years. Omega XL, it's sourced from the green-lipped mussel, exclusively found in the pristine waters of New Zealand, some of the cleanest waters on Earth. Omega XL, it's natural, drug-free, and it's backed by more than 40 years of clinical research that show it really works. Try Omega XL today. Pick up your phone and call the number at the bottom of your screen right now for a special offer. Buy one, get two free. 2 bottles of Omega XL plus Vitamin XL D3, a value of more than $100. But call today and you pay only $39.95. That's a savings of more than 60%. Plus, it's backed by our 60-day money-back guarantee.
Try it. You got nothing to lose.
Call or go online right now to get this special offer. 2 bottles of Omega XL plus Vitamin XL D3 for only $39.95. Call now.
That first time seeing my son, I feel like my life did a 180. I was already trying to change my perspective of life and really just be a father figure that I never had. Being present is the most important part. I'm still growing every day. Becoming a better version of myself. To be the better mirror for my son. I mean, he's just growing. He's becoming his own person. Man, first I saw him dance, bro, he brings the vibes, you know what I'm saying? He brings the party no matter what. He really a definition of like why he loves somebody. And I love him to the death of me.
And thanks for staying with us. Federal immigration authorities detaining a student from Turkey in Massachusetts. Authorities already revoked the visa of the pro-Palestine activist. This as U.S. officials are traveling abroad to strengthen partnerships in the fight against illegal immigration. NTD's international correspondent, Arian Pazdar, is in Latin America with the immigration update.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem on Wednesday, traveling to El Salvador. The country houses a maximum security prison, which holds alleged gang members. Some of them have been deported from the U.S. Noem is set to visit the prison on Wednesday, before meeting with President Nayib Bukele later on the same day. She's also scheduled to visit Colombia and Mexico after her stop in El Salvador. Noem previously laid out what she hopes to achieve during her meetings with the heads of state of those countries.
Building these relationships so that we can continue to get people out of this country that don't belong here and take them home.
And Secretary of State Marco Rubio is in the Caribbean on Wednesday. He'll also address illegal immigration, narco-trafficking and more. Now, these trips abroad come as U.S. officials also keep tackling illegal immigration at home in the U.S. Late on Tuesday, immigration authorities arrested a PhD student near Boston. Turkish citizen Rumeysa Öztürk studies at Tufts University and has previously engaged in pro-Palestine activities on campus. She criticized the school because it didn't divest from companies with ties to Israel. An attorney for the student filed a lawsuit after the Tuesday arrest, saying she has been wrongfully detained. A district judge has now decided that the student should not be moved out of the state of Massachusetts for now. This comes less than 3 weeks after a Columbia University student was arrested, a case which made nationwide headlines. Mahmoud Khalil is being accused of supporting the terrorist organization Hamas. Khalil denies the accusations. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
President Trump today expressing his willingness to defund government-sponsored news outlets like NPR and PBS. Are everyday Americans on board with the idea, and do they get their news from state-funded media? NTD's Sam Wang was out on the National Mall in D.C. to survey the people.
Do you get your news from NPR or PBS or other government-funded news outlets?
Depend on those as well as independent news outlets. But yes, I do watch NPR and PBS.
No, sir. I get most of it streaming services and the internet.
I do. NPR was my mom's favorite. I still listen to it today.
Fox is where I get most of my information from.
We get most of ours from Christian radio. I do listen to a little NPR just to irritate my wife every once in a while.
Dinner conversation topics.
What do you think about the Trump administration's efforts to take government money away from outlets like NPR and PBS?
Well, he is the president, and enough people voted for him, so he pretty much can do what he'd like to do, but you have to remember Congress has to agree to whatever he wants to do.
I don't like the idea of taking the funds away, but then again, I don't like the idea of a biased news reporting. I think DOGE is really trying to clean the garbage out and the thievery that's going on.
No, what about their First Amendment rights? People should be able to hear all voices, whether they're left, they're right, or the middle, and then you form your own opinion from all of that information.
Well, NPR's been so one-sided, I can't understand why he wouldn't want to. I didn't hear that he was going to take away.
We are proponents of downsizing big government and the efforts of Trump and DOGE to expose the truth.
Do you think a government-funded outlet should lean one way or another politically?
I believe that it's the freedom that we have here, and you should respect the freedom. If you don't like it, you can go to Venezuela.
They need to present facts. They don't need a bunch of talking heads telling you what you should think one way or the other.
I think government funded should be totally neutral, absolutely neutral. It shouldn't have any sort of leaning at all. Walter Cronkite back in the 60s, they would tell you this is what happened, this is who said what do you think? And they don't come up going, this is what I want you to think.
I don't appreciate their bias, one-sided slant all the time anyways, and if that means Trump and his administration is making some hard decisions, okay, let's see what unrolls from all of that.
A near majority of the Supreme Court today upheld a rule that requires background checks on buyers of untraceable gun parts sold in kits. It held that once assembled, those ghost guns are firearms. NTD's legal correspondent Arlene Richards has more on the story.
The Supreme Court voted 7-2 on Wednesday to uphold the Biden administration's rule that regulates so-called ghost guns, which can be assembled at home. Justice Neil Gorsuch, writing the opinion for the court, said in part, "The kit comes with all necessary components, and its intended function as instrument of combat is obvious. Really, the kit's name says it all: buy, build, shoot." Gun manufacturers and individuals who purchased the kits sued the Biden administration in 2022 after the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or ATF, issued a new rule that requires serial numbers on the kits. Sellers also must perform background checks on people who purchased them. Law enforcement had reported a dramatic increase in ghost guns found at crime scenes, from 1,600 in 2017 to 19,000 4 years later. Gorsuch noted in his opinion that the way Americans think about guns has changed significantly since 1968, when Congress approved the Gun Control Act. He wrote, "Recent years, however, have witnessed profound changes in how guns are made and sold." Justice Clarence Thomas, one of the two High Court members who dissented from the opinion, said he would adhere to the words Congress enacted. He said in his dissenting opinion, Congress could have authorized ATF to regulate any part of a firearm or any object readily convertible into one, but it did not. Meanwhile, President Trump signed an order last month that requires the Attorney General to review gun regulations imposed by the Biden administration. Although this case was not a Second Amendment dispute, it's not clear how Trump will handle the ghost gun issue going forward. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
And for more on this story, we're going to continue after this break. Don't go away.
Heavenly beauty unfolds on stage. A lost civilization revived. Experience China's 5,000 years of wonder before communism. Breathtaking, inspiring. See it at least once in your lifetime.
Shen Yun coming to Lincoln Center March 26th to April 13th. Buy tickets now at shenyun.com.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, I have an important message about security. Write down the number on your screen so you can call when I finish. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. This is a lock for your life insurance, a rate lock that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. But be careful. Many policies you see do not have one. But you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. Call this number to learn more. This plan was designed with a rate lock for people on a fixed income who want life insurance that fits their budget and is simple to get. Coverage options start at $9.95 a month, less than 35 cents a day. Act now, and your rate will be locked in for life. It will never increase, guaranteed. This is lifelong coverage that can never be canceled as long as you pay your premiums, guaranteed. And your acceptance is guaranteed, with no health questions. You cannot be turned down because of your health. Call for your information kit and read about this rate lock for yourself. You'll also get a free beneficiary planner. Both are free with no obligation. Don't miss out. Call for information, then decide. Read about the 30-day 100% money-back guarantee. Don't wait. Call this number now.
Call now and you will also get this free beneficiary planner. Use this valuable guide to record important information and your final wishes, and it's yours free just for calling. So don't wait. Call 1-800-357-4821 for your free information. That's 1-800-357-4821. There's no risk or obligation. That number again is 1-800-357-4821. That's 1-800-357-4821. 1-800-357-4821. Call now.
At Mathis Home, we understand that your home is a reflection of you. And during our spring style event, we have fresh new looks that are waiting to make your home look and feel great at the lowest prices. And with all the latest styles in bloom, you'll find savings in every department. Whether it's a clean and modern sectional or a rustic and traditional dining table, we have it in stock with fast and free delivery. Come find the look that's right for you at our spring style event at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
Welcome back, and joining us now to give us their take on the Supreme Court upholding rules requiring background checks for so-called ghost guns is David Katz, criminal defense attorney, former assistant U.S. attorney, and former federal prosecutor, and as well Gerard Filitti, senior counsel, the Lawfare Project, and attorney specializing in national security law and policy and counterterrorism. So good afternoon to you both. Thank you very much for coming on. Can I just get both of your reactions, initial reactions here to this ruling? Maybe starting with you, David.
Well, I thought it was predictable because the U.S. Supreme Court had not allowed the ruling to go into effect. In other words, they had maintained the status quo, which was that there was regulation of ghost guns, which meant that people had to, the manufacturers had to put a serial number on the kit like they would have with a firearm, and there had to be background checks. So in that sense, it was predictable. I guess some people think it was a little unusual because the Supreme Court has had some jurisprudence the last few years in favor of gun ownership and carrying. But the last decision before this one was the one that restricted people under domestic violence restraining orders from having guns. So I thought this one was the second in a row now of the Supreme Court acting sensibly here, 7-2, in favor of reasonable gun regulation.
And Gerard, I saw you nodding along there. What's your reaction?
I think that's exactly right. We also saw the oral arguments. The court was very much inclined to rule in favor of keeping this regulation. And we have seen the court being willing to consider common sense restrictions, common sense regulations on gun ownership. And even though this was not a Second Amendment case, strictly speaking, we do see the court's facility with using logic and reasoning to make common sense decisions.
Okay, David, so there were dissenting opinion here. What's your reaction to Justice Thomas's argument that Congress didn't actually authorize ATF to regulate any object readily convertible into a weapon?
Well, there used to be a cottage industry predicting how justices would rule. You can't get any action on Thomas and Alito. Thomas and Alito are just, completely pro-Trump, completely pro whatever industry wants in its sort of wildest fringe views. So I wasn't at all surprised. The argument is that, oh, here goes the government overreaching again. But it wasn't. There's actually a lot of logic to this. There was an argument by the plaintiffs that it was like, doing hobby work on your car, spend an hour and a half fussing with your car on the weekend. But it wasn't like that. The reality is these are very easy to put together. There's no trick. You don't have to be any great mechanic. You can put it together in 20 minutes. And the whole logo, the whole sales pitch is buy it, build it, shoot it.
All right, Gerard, same question to you, but also, is this ruling a positive for reducing gun-related crimes?
Well, I think it's not difficult to see where Justice Thomas would have come out on this, because he does tend to look closely at the exact language that Congress uses when passing a law. And in this case, he found holes that he wanted to show that the Congress could have said when it issued this law in 1968, the Gun Control Act, that it was also regulating components of firearms and parts of guns, but that's not what the text said. So Justice Thomas's dissent is a reasonable continuation of the way he interprets statutes, interprets congressional lawmaking. Whether this will actually reduce violence by guns remains to be seen. The issue is not that guns are being used, it's not a registration problem, it's a use problem. Criminals don't take the time to register guns or go through background checks, and that's what's really the driving impetus of gun violence. It's not whether or not they're registered.
All right, so David, let me ask you, so maintaining this regulation on guns, is there any question of potentially infringing on American Second Amendment rights?
No, I don't think so. Trump could try to promulgate a new rule and go through the whole rulemaking and then the appeals process as this rule did, but it would be a long time trying to change it, and I don't think there's really that much impetus behind it. I think that sensible gun owners should be all for this. The reality is that ghost guns have now taken over this crime area. There used to be a couple of thousand that were found at crime scenes. Now it's a normal thing that murders, rapes, robberies are committed with these ghost guns. The reason that people like them, especially with this regulation, had it gone the way that this Texas district judge that this case was shopped around to. It's so funny hearing the Republicans talk about they don't want to have cases shopped around to district judges around the country who issue nationwide injunctions. Of course, that was their stock in trade when Biden was in power. And this was one of those district judges in Texas they ran to, but SCOTUS didn't allow the ruling to go into effect. And so you did have to get registration. You did have to have a licensing. You did have to have all of those things. And to get around it, you had these ghost guns. And so I think the more that they clamp down on this, and as I said, I think law-abiding people, gun owners, gun enthusiasts should be all for this, because this ghost guns really is the arm of choice of criminals. They're creating havoc and mayhem with this, and there's nothing in it for people who really believe in the Second Amendment and want to see it interpreted sensibly to allow this mass criminal wave. And so I don't think Trump is going to reverse this one.
But David, do regulations like this disproportionately affect law-abiding gun owners?
Well, the idea is that, when the laws make it illegal to have guns, the illegal people will go and get guns. We've heard that motto slung around for years. But this gun thing is completely out of control. The idea, imagine if it had gone the other way. These kits wouldn't have any markings whatsoever. You wouldn't have to have a background check at all. What stops every felon who wants to be in possession of a firearm from getting one of these? What stops every criminal from having their throwaway gun be a ghost gun? This was a completely untenable situation. And I just don't think there are a lot of law-abiding, sensible people who are for gun control who thought this was a good idea, except, of course, Alito and Thomas, who have become just a rubber stamp for whatever big business and its craziest antics want to do. It's really unfortunate because I love the Supreme Court.
Okay, Gerard, your reaction.
Look, I think that one thing it's important to bear in mind is that the Supreme Court didn't actually weigh in on what kinds of gun kits are subject to this regulation. It left open to individual challenges, the different types of gun kits, different types of components that might fall within this regulation. So I think what we're seeing is really a common sense approach when you have, and I think the court went into this at length, when you have guns that you really just open the box and spend 30 minutes tinkering with, and you have a fully assembled weapon, that is something easily and predictably that should be registered as a firearm, that should be subject to the Gun Control Act. But it leaves open to the question when you have fewer components, when you have more labor that's required, therefore more skill, something that's outside the norms of what most people can do and really requires a particularized knowledge. I think that leaves it open to challenge whether future regulations or different types of gun kits will fall under the Act. There is clarity by this court's decision saying that common sense restrictions can be in place, but we still don't know what the boundaries of those common sense restrictions are, and it will be future cases that help define that.
So Justice Thomas, if I remember correctly, said there could be unforeseen circumstances due to this ruling. What do you think the impact will be, Gerard, with this decision on future gun control laws?
Well, I think that the unforeseen circumstances can always be in terms of people understanding and having clarity as to what the law actually says, what you can be punished for. And when you don't have that clarity, when you don't know what percentage of a gun must be present in a kit in order to qualify for this act, and therefore having possession of it be a crime, that creates uncertainty that subjects law-abiding people to penalty, to the risk of prosecution and incarceration. So really what we need is more definition of what constitutes these gun kits, and that's not what the court did. That will fall to future regulation by the ATF. And I don't think that we can see that anytime soon. I don't think President Trump is inclined to add regulations that make it more difficult to get guns or gun parts. So this is something that may take years to develop the jurisprudence on.
All right, David, final thoughts.
May I just say, well, there's been a tendency to really cut back on ATF's regulations and firearms. And, as an assistant U.S. attorney, I was under President Reagan. I saw the ATF in action, and they did a really good job. There are cases that are absolutely important that the ATF get into. There are people who run around with illegal guns. They come up with one way after another to commit violence and to increase the crime rate. And ATF is really an important agency in counteracting them. And they've taken almost as much grief over the years as the FBI has been taken recently from Trump's backers. But they're a good agency, and the idea that there's some runaway agency, no, they're very dedicated people, and they're trying to circumscribe violent acts, people getting guns, getting things like these kits. And I agree with your other guests that, yes, there will be some interesting cases in the future, but that's not the core of what's going on. The core of what's going on is these very easy to assemble gun kits that have been turning into lots and lots of street violence and robberies. And it's great that the Supreme Court ruled 7-2 to do something to curtail it.
Well, all right. I wish we had more time to discuss this, but that should be it for today. Thank you both for coming on very much. David, Gerard.
Great to be with you.
Okay, thank you very much for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. Stay with us for NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific.